And welcome back to coverage here of the Magic Online Championship. Marshall Sutcliffe with Patrick Sullivan, and we are ready for the finals. Here we have Michael Jacob facing off against Logan Nettles. This is Modern for our opening match. We're playing best 2 out of 3 matches. We'll kick things off with Modern, and it's Selesnya Heliod Company in the hands of MJ. Down on the bottom, Jabberwocky, just Jund, just 4 little letters, Jund. Plays it a lot, certainly knows the ins and outs, and it gives a player of his caliber a lot of flexibility with game plan, with adjusting post sideboard, and even with different lines of play. This opening hand, fairly straightforward though, huh? An IOK, a Bloodbraid Elf, and a Fatal Push with some lands.
It's really charming, I gotta say. Just like, did you not get the memo about the cards they made in 2019 and 2020? You're just not interested? Okay.
It's actually true for both players.
There's nothing wrong with any of these cards, but it is nice to sort of watch someone of Logan's caliber sort of wash his hands of the last 2 years and good old reliable Jund.
Oh, that is really funny when you put it that way, especially considering how the last year or two has gone as far as card power level and the way that it's affected even these older formats. Logan's just sticking with what works here. He's going to kick things off with Inquisition of Kozilek, and we see a pretty tame hand here for Michael. Just a pair of Scavenging Oozes, an Arbor Elf, and a Utopia Sprawl with the 2 lands there.
Yeah, the card that jumps out at me at this hand is Utopia Sprawl, because then first of all, it's pretty explosive just mana-wise, and then also it's the only white source of mana in this hand, which means that even if MJ were to draw a Heliod, you have a longer window to maybe find a discard spell to get rid of it. And also the tiebreaker here is the rest of these cards just aren't very impressive, especially in the face of your Fatal Push to answer 1 threat.
That's right. Fatal Push sitting there ready to kill something. It'll have to be up to Logan to decide if killing a redundant Scavenging Ooze is worth it, or maybe just snapping off an Arbor Elf before the mana advantage kicks in for MJ. But there is Utopia Sprawl hitting the graveyard, and back over to you. Gavany Township off the top isn't going to change the equation, at least yet. Here comes Arbor Elf, and pass the turn back over. Raging Ravine is the draw step here for Logan Nettles. I suppose if you're going to draw a land, that would be the one you want.
There's so many classic tracks. I mean, this is beautiful. You were going to Fatal Push anyway.
Yeah.
So you have your land enters the battlefield to tap. Maybe on turn 20 or so, you roll around, you fire that thing up, you come on in. It's just, this is taking me back. Not my childhood. We're not that far back, but my more naive adult days.
Yeah, exactly.
Another reason to take the Utopia Sprawl out of that hand is when you have Bloodbraid Elf, you kind of want to make sure your opponent has a creature if possible, because so much of what you can flip over is a removal spell. So if you take a creature and then you kill a creature, you might have in a spot where they don't have anything the turn you play Bloodbraid Elf, and then your Dreadbores and Lightning Bolts are whiffs too. So you want to leave them a little bit creature flooded.
All right, Ranger Captain of Eos off the top of the library here, and that's another card that is just not going to matter here, at least in the short term, as he's miles away from being able to cast that thing.
Yep, the lack of white mana here is going to be a big problem, and it means, MJ's, even if he draws Heliod, can't cast it. And like we talked about before the match started, if Logan can make the game about you don't have Heliod, you have to beat me with your other cards, it's asking a ton. He can win that sort of game. It's the Heliod games that are going to be challenging. So cutting him off of white mana here is really important.
Thoughtseize is going to strip away a Scavenging Ooze, and with no white mana available, currently Michael Jacob has 2 bricks in his hand, and with this Bloodbraid Elf set to come down, it could perhaps find a way to deal with the Scavenging Ooze and really set Michael at 0 here until he finds white mana.
Yeah, pretty much all the hits are good here. A discard spell is totally fine. An additional creature is solid here. A removal spell for the Scavenging Ooze would be excellent. There aren't a whole lot of misses here.
So it looks like it's just time to spin the wheel on the Bloodbraid Elf. Of course, Logan's going to make sure that he understands exactly which land to play, what he can get. Again, I described him as very thorough, before. He really does make sure to get these details right. There's the one removal spell that doesn't quite take care of the ooze here.
Yeah, that is the one miss, basically, from here.
Yeah. Wow, I got you on record saying Lightning Bolt was a miss, by the way. You can't.
It's rare. I'm not saying it happens all that often, but this spot counts.
There we go. Misty Rainforest off the top of the library here for Michael Jacob will now give him access to white mana thanks to Temple Garden, and he's going to kick things off with Conclave Mentor. For him, the Ranger Captain's still stuck in hand, but he at least gets to make a play this turn.
Yeah, and the game's really not going that badly for him besides. I mean, I did speak at length about MJ's inability to kind of win a attacking and blocking and removal spell style game, but he's got the largest threat on the battlefield. There's nothing that Logan can really do about it right now. And Michael is drawing pretty heavy here. Another land suddenly enables Gavany Township. If it happens to make white mana, then Ranger Captain of Eos is part of the equation. So yeah, I mean that Bloodbraid Elf hitting a lightning bolt there was big for MJ because a lot of cards there, even any creature really would ship the damage race. He doesn't mind a lava spike there given the shape of the game.
Curious to see if the Nile Spellbomb gets, cycled, as we say here, to try to find some action, or is it time to get on that magic carpet and ride, just fire up the Raging Ravine and start slamming here?
Well, if you activate the Raging Ravine, Michael can block 2/2 in front of Bloodbraid Elf, and then the Scavenging Ooze is running away with the game. So I do think that you have to give yourself
only be able to attack with the Ravine.
Right, and at that point, you're chump blocking. MJ's at 9, and Michael's drawing very heavy because, as I mentioned, even an untapped land really shifts the way the damage race works. So I think you've got to. My instinct here is you got to Nile Spellbomb and look for some help, something like Dreadbore, or just something that can deal with the Scavenging Ooze. He's not really in a position to damage race with the Ravine, I don't think.
Okay, so let's see what he can find with the Nile Spellbomb. He plays his land for the turn. He still has Wooded Foothills available. And yeah, really important here, along the lines of what you were just saying, we got to make sure that we look out for the life totals, right? Logan Nettles is down to 9 here. He's actually getting beaten pretty hard. And there's also Gavany Township, which can change the math too, depending on if there's a little more mana here for Michael.
Yep. So Utopia Sprawl is not a bad consolation prize for Michael. I'm sure he would have preferred untapped white mana. But this still allows him to play everything and set up for 5 mana plus Gavany Township next turn. And there's a pretty powerful incentive here for Michael to just not attack and pass the turn, because Logan has left all this mana up and is sort of signaling a willingness to block with the Raging Ravine. You could just sort of set up shop here, make a dominating battlefield, and get to Gavany Township next turn, plus whatever you happen to find with this Ranger Captain.
Yeah, Logan threatening the double block here with the Raging Ravine and the Bloodbraid Elf of all things. But it should hold, and it should make it so that he is not going to take any damage this turn, and then that'll give him a little bit of room to get the Nile Spellbomb on the battlefield. But he's finding himself behind, and this Gavany Township game plan actually seems to be coming together here for Michael. He's going to just go grab an Arbor Elf, but that finishes off a perfectly mana efficient turn for him as he passes it back.
Well, the big thing too is just any creature here is good if you expect to pivot to Gavany Township next turn, almost no matter what the draw step is.
Right.
So it's not like the highest ceiling hit by any means, but a 1/1 for 1 here is totally serviceable.
Well, there's a Renin 6. I guess he could kill the elf, but that puts you in a very difficult position here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the worst to get rid of the Arbor Elf, but if you're not willing to deploy the Nile Spellbomb as well, it's more food for the Ooze, and it still doesn't take MJ off of his ability to go to Gavany Township next turn. Not a bad draw, but not one that's going to get Logan out from this spot.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to need some help here off of this Nile Spellbomb. Some way to remove the Ooze would be preferable, but anything to kill one of those other 3 creatures and still be able to cast the Renin 6 could scratch him back towards being in this game. And he found Bloodbraid Elf.
Yeah, the big hit in that spot, I believe, was Dreadbore, because Dreadbore sets you up for a turn of kill the Scavenging Ooze, Renin 6 down your Arbor Elf, and now I'm kind of at parity again. This potentially gives Logan another really powerful set of spikes here. There are removal spells that he can hit here to kind of catch up.
Oh, there's Liliana of the Veil. It's not the best removal spell to hit, but it definitely counts.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you can do better, but you can certainly do worse as well. The problem is that, with when you're at 8 in the spot, Michael just has so many ways to make combat bad for you between the Scavenging Ooze and the Gavany Township that no matter how you block, MJ's going to have a way to punish you here.
Right. Ooh, and collected company as well for Michael Jacob. So now he has to decide between, is it better just to start Gavany Townshiping, or do I want to fire off company?
Well, when you already have the Arbor Elf in the graveyard, there's an argument that it's just as beneficent to collect a company and eat with the Scavenging Ooze as it would be to activate the township. You can also move into combat right now, sort of threatening, like you are just going to township, get your blocks as is, and then collect a company if it breaks a different way.
Michael's surveying the scene here and seeing if the fair game plan can get him over the line here in game number 1.
Because, for example, if you collect a company now, your Ranger Captain of Eos just trades with the Bloodbraid Elf if you choose to attack. If you just attack as the first order of business, the best block is probably Logan double blocking your Scavenging Ooze, and then you can just collect a company anyway. So you get your 5 damage in that way, and still get to advance your battlefield. But there's a lot of different. Michael has a plethora of good ways to play this turn. He's got a lot of good options afforded to him.
And Michael can just ignore Liliana here, right?
Yeah, I mean the only thing Liliana can do next turn is both players discard a card, and Michael's going to be empty-handed, so he can just ignore that at least for this turn.
It looks like he had something lined up here, perhaps the company, but has decided to go back into the tank and reconsider.
Yeah, to me, the question is, do you have anything that shifts combat more positively than the threat of using Gavany Township? I would be surprised if that's the case. And so my intuition here is just attack as the first order of business and have presumably Logan double blocks your Scavenging Ooze. But if MJ feels like he has something that changes the calculus on combat better than that threat, then you collect a company as the first order of business.
Mana is being tapped, and there it is. Collected company on the stack. Of course, it's going to resolve. Well, I see Heliod right there. Also, Ranger Captain number 2 hits the battlefield. So 2 solid hits here, and Heliod's even alive and kicking.
Well, now Logan's kind of getting it from a bunch of different directions. He's behind on the battlefield substantially, and also MJ is threatening to combo out. This might actually pivot Michael to wanting to get rid of the Liliana this turn, because he has the combo sewn up with Ballista in hand plus the Heliod. If you get the Liliana out of the way, you don't have to worry about it being tagged by a discard spell. And if Logan's top deck is a Thoughtseizer and Inquisition, that's probably not going to be good enough to beat the battlefield.
Really interesting, right? Because having cast this collected company first will let Michael know, okay, actually Liliana is more important than it seemed originally. And, that isn't something that you'd necessarily consider. It's only because Ranger Captain, and look at this, Michael just got Arbor Elf.
Yeah, I guess if you want to get Arbor Elf, it's because you're just saying, I don't want to even engage with the Liliana. I want to attack you down for lethal as fast as I can. Right. And when I have the Heliod on the battlefield, there's so many implied draw steps that get so much more powerful, because I can kill you from Spike Feeder, Walking Ballista, a variety of cards. So just find something that I can cast.
Okay, here comes the team. This is representing a lethal attack against Logan, so at least one creature must be blocked, though it'll be likely that Logan will want it to try to take out as much as he can here.
Yeah, there's a little, this is sort of the downside that I spoke to a little bit of the collected company pre-combat, was Logan has a lot more information and agency on the blocks. He can, for example, put a Bloodbraid Elf in front of a Ranger Captain, which he couldn't have done if MJ moved into combat as a first order of business. At the end of the day, I just don't think it matters that much. MJ hit just enough juice off of that collected company that even if Logan gets slightly better blocks, it's not the end of the world. But this is some of the downside risk that I talked about earlier.
So this is going to put a couple of counters actually on Scavenging Ooze here and make it lethal.
Well, then there's that.
And then there's also that. So that is going to be game. Logan actually went for a block on each of the creatures, the 2/2 and the 3/3, perhaps trying to take Heliod off of being a creature by reducing devotion as well. But the Conclave Mentor doubles the counters on there. And yeah, there we go. Game number 1 goes to Michael Jacob as we move towards the sideboard. Now I'm looking over at the right-hand side here, Patrick, over at Logan Nettles' sideboard. Now he's already fairly well set up against creature-based decks. Does he have anything that he can bring in that substantially increases his win percent here?
Nothing great here. The collective brutalities, there are creatures to kill, but it doesn't really speak to the number one problem, which is Heliod. There are, in theory, non-basic lands to target with Fulminator Mage, but not at a volume or a need such that that's worth really going there. There are some ways to search the library, but not enough that Ashiok is over the line, and MJ is kind of equipped to attack down Planeswalkers sort of broadly anyway. This might be the same. You might just have to shuffle up and present the same 15. There's nothing here. There's some cards here that do some stuff, but I don't think he's got really anything better than what's available in the main deck.
Interesting. And probably bad news for Logan, right? He wasn't able to win that game. And that was not a game where we saw Michael Jacob go for some really quick combo and, something with Heliod, and that was it. That was a pretty fair version of the deck, and Logan just couldn't keep up.
No, he just sort of didn't have enough material to work with, flooded out maybe a little bit, but and MJ was kind of controlling the battlefield and the damage race even before Collected Company and Heliod were part of the equation. So that to me is emblematic of sort of MJ's advantage in the matchup. It didn't even come down to Heliod necessarily, and he still won that game pretty comfortably.
You can see Michael Jacob putting the finishing touches on his sideboard plan here.
Yeah, his sideboard is pretty nice here. He's getting away from the Arbor Elves, partially because of Run and 6, and partially because they sort of just die. And he's coming up with some more, some better value plays. You see a Celestial Purge here to come in as some removal. A Veil of Summer lines up really well against a variety of things. And you could be pretty confident the Veil is going to get an opportunity to line up with discard because, again, deck lists are public at this point, and MJ knows that Logan has little to anything to sideboard it. He could bring in some cycling cards or whatever, but he's almost certainly having to leave in Thoughtseize and Inquisition, and so those Veil of Summers have an opportunity to be really excellent.
Also saw 3 copies of Auriok Champion coming in, which have to be a pain for Logan.
Yep, it's not game over. You can overpower that card with Tarmogoyf and some other things, but it's not the easiest card for him to beat, and it's just one more. Even once we get past Heliod, the second wave of stuff being kind of problematic in its own right, making this matchup really problematic.
So we were talking about how important Heliod is for Michael's game plan if the combo is going to be the way that he wins. He has one in his opening hand. The only other spell, though, is Collected Company. Is that a keep?
I do. I think all other things, it looks like he sent that one back. My issue with that mulligan, I think it's fine because, as you mentioned, the hand's very fragile. Against Jund, with so much removal, discard Liliana the Veil. The most common way that you lose is you were just a card short. You just ran out of stuff to do. They beat you with their leftovers. And so your bar for mulliganing has to be pretty high because they can kind of run you out of stuff to do no matter what cards you happen to draw. And this is part of the downside risk. MJ is now down a card, and his hand is less functional than the 7-card hand. But he can't go down to 5 against Jund, so you're priced into keeping this.
Yeah, more mana issues here for MJ as well. As you see, it's the Pendelhaven plus the Forest, no white sources in sight. And currently, he's got 4 white cards in hand, as well as 2 of them having double white and Windswept Heath off the top. Thank you very much.
Yep, that's a huge draw here. And MJ's hand is actually kind of rolled up to combo already. He can Eldormar's Call for Heliod, cast Heliod, Spike Feeder's there. We're already looking at MJ getting the pieces together.
Ooh, Inquisition of Kozilek here from Nettles. Very important piece, as he could potentially break this up. He can do the math here and go, all right, well, I can see that you have the combo assembled at least somewhat here, and he can break up one piece or the other as he sees fit.
Yeah, no reason for MJ to do anything in response to this. You can't Eldormar's Call for something with 5 or more mana, or 4 more mana, because there really isn't anything in the deck that fits that bill. And you don't want to put extra card types in the graveyard for no reason against this Tarmogoyf.
Right, makes sense. Now Nettles has to decide what he wants to do. It's going to be Eladamri's call hitting the bin. And this Tarmogoyf gets to come in for 3.
But now MJ, I mean, this is a really good opening for Nettles, but if MJ just finds Heliod off the top, it could all be for naught.
That's right. Now, how does Michael have to play this, right? Because he can't just run the spike feeder out there. It needs to be he finds the other first, or how does this play out?
I don't think that he can play the spike feeder first, because if he does and the spike feeder dies, now Heliod's not a draw. Mm-hmm. So you just got to hang back, take your lumps, and hope that you find Heliod in time.
Okay.
Well, surprising.
I'm surprised by that too. He's exposed this to a lightning bolt or so whatever.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, my issue with this play is the rest of his hand is so bad. Like, he's got double white spells he can't cast, and he has a Celestial Purge that doesn't line up against anything. So it would be one thing if, from my perspective, it would be one thing if, all right, my Spike Feeder dies, but I have other stuff to do next turn. The removal spell is going to be good regardless, and I just kind of like got to move on here. We're not really in that kind of spot. On top of that, this is putting a creature into the graveyard where there wasn't one before. So I'm curious. I'm interested to see how this one plays out. It makes me a little bit nervous from MJ's perspective of just now even Heliod's not really that high leverage of a draw, and the rest of your hand is worth very little.
Another Tarmogoyf off the top of the library. Logan, interestingly, declining to go with the lightning bolt there on end step. He said, okay, you can have it. And he's going to attack with the Tarmogoyf now. Offering him the chance to block or something instead. There it is, lightning bolt. And that will result in 4 life for Michael, but 1 additional fewer thanks to the Tarmogoyf growing. And here's a pair of Tarmogoyfs, and that forest does not help Michael Jacob. He has no castable cards in hand.
Yeah, this was the risk with the mulligan here. Try to go and find a better hand, and wasn't able to. And Logan's hand pretty much perfect here. Yep. Discard spell, a lot of pressure, and some removal spells. About all you could ask for, really.
Right, and as it turned out, a perfect clock here, as those Goyfs are 8 power total together. With Michael at 16, he just dropped to 8. He's going to have 1 more draw step to find something on the board, and a lot of those somethings aren't going to get the job done against a Dreadbore either.
No, Logan's leftovers here are very strong. Dreadbore, Fatal Push, Liliana on the Veil. Even if MJ finds a really good draw step, even something like Collected Company, it's not likely to amount to very much.
It's another spike feeder. That will buy him an extra turn.
it can be cast. So yes. There you go.
And it makes his life total higher than 8, which was all kind of part of the equation here. Though it does feel like he's going to find himself in a similar position next turn, where he's facing lethal and won't really have much of a way out. And this is going to be even worse, as he's going to be facing lethal from 2 different Tarmogoyfs, not necessarily both of them together. And it's hard to imagine MJ getting out of this at this point. He finds a Horizon Canopy, but it looks like it's too late.
It's a redraw to Collected Company.
There you go. Could get 2 creatures down to block. So he's going to pass. Wait till those Goyfs get into combat, perhaps thinking about Thoughtseize or something.
Discard spell, sorcery speed removal. Mm-hmm. You know, no. If you're only drawing to Collected Company anyway, there's no reason to do anything about it.
Look at that Bloodbraid Elf off the top of the library here for Nettles.
But Nettles knows he really only has to beat Collected Company from this spot, and it's possible that leaving up Fatal Push is better than the Bloodbraid Elf, especially when he knows about the Celestial Purge that would just kill the Bloodbraid Elf anyway. Right. But it still just might be, the Fatal Push might be too mopey to leave up here if the best hits that MJ has cost specifically 3 mana. So I don't know, it's worth thinking about it. Nettles' position right now is one of those, all right, I feel like I'm like 99+% to win this. Try to identify what that sub 1% is that MJ has to get out of this, and what's the best way to play around that.
Yeah, and Nettles he revels in this. Oh, and look at that. Redemption for your lightning bolt here, Patrick.
Yeah, this looks a lot better than it did the first time around.
Uh-huh. Lightning bolt, a fantastic hit. Now, realistically, putting this completely out of range here for Michael, he's going to be facing down 3 lethal threats, and there's only so much you can hit. And remember, we were all predicating that on him actually hitting Collected Company off of the Horizon Canopy, which was also an unlikely scenario. So, game number 2 goes to Logan Nettles, and I have to say, both games 1 and 2 looked pretty easy for these players, right? And Michael Jacob just kind of cast some creatures and turned them sideways. And Logan Nettles said, kill a few of your things and beat you down with some goifs. It was clear sailing for both players.
Yeah, I mean, in game 1, MJ found a lot of his key pieces and sort of overwhelmed Logan. In game number 2, Michael was on 6 cards, was on a lot of double white cards that he couldn't cast, and Celestial Purge lining up the wrong way against Tarmogoyf, and a very smooth, very easy Jund win. Your opponent has a handful of relevant cards, you pick those apart, and you beat them with your superior leftovers.
I like how you put that. That to me, by the way, sums up the Jund strategy really nicely, right? Like, so often they do a bunch of powerful things that result in them getting slightly ahead, and then their Raging Ravine kills you, right? It's just the
Yep.
last thing standing is what actually does the death blow.
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to get all these positive exchanges on mana, essentially. Like you're killing things for 3 mana that cost 2, or sort of being ahead implied by you have the synergistic thing you're trying to set up. I'm thought seizing and inquisitioning away your highest leverage pieces, and then the leftovers just aren't as good as my cards. So there's a lot of sort of trying to isolate the game down to 1 or 2 key cards and coming out ahead of that, and was able to do that very easily in game number 2 because MJ was without any meaningful synergies, or without a card like Heliod, which in the context of the matchup could be worth like 3, 4, 5, 6 cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have not seen Michael Jacob assemble the combo just yet. We talked about it on our pregame here. You and I did, Patrick, about we've seen Michael get infinite life a few times, or we shorthand infinite life a few times over the course of the weekend. And in some matchups, there were still ways for the opponent to win, but it doesn't look like that would be the case here against Jund.
No, infinite life here. I would imagine if MJ has a Heliod and plays Spike Feeder, that Logan's just going to tap. Part of that is he just can't realistically get the Heliod off the battlefield. So infinite life means eventually I'm finding a walking ballista, and there's nothing that can be done about it. But more fundamentally, Logan just can't beat MJ at 1,000,000 life. And that's the whole thing.
There you go. All right, we see the opening hands for our players here. A pair of Skyclave Apparition and a Collected Company. So a pretty slow opener here for Michael Jacob. On the other side, all the Jundy goodness your little heart could take here. Bolts, Goifs, Renin 6s, Dreadbores, even a Cruxa and an Inquisition down there.
It's a really nice looking hand for Logan. Stuff to do early, stuff to do late, ways to trade off. The biggest issue with this hand, I think it would be pretty much perfect if that Inquisition was a Thoughtseize. As it stands, he can't do anything about that Collected Company. And if MJ is able to just get that card to resolve, what he puts onto the battlefield could be so overwhelming that even a hand this good might not be up to the task.
Really kind of interesting. He decided to go for the build for the 4 Inquisition of Kozilek and the 2 Thoughtseize. But boy, he would prefer to trade it in this particular matchup, even though Inquisition hits, I think, everything in the opposing deck outside of Collected Company. Like, it really does hit almost everything there.
Yep, but, and we've seen Logan also play against Cryptic Command Omnath. It's like, yep, Inquisition's really good, and you got to respect the aggressive decks in the format. But there are some real high leverage 4s, and he's up against one of them right now.
There's Auriok Champion. Very interesting draw there. Now we do see Tarmogoyf here for Nettles, which can tussle with it quite cleanly, but the rest of his cards can't.
Nope, he's got red and black removal, red and black Planeswalker, red removal spell. Champion, it's nice to have the Tarmogoyf here. You can at least outsize it, but it's a tricky card.
There's a Liliana of the Veil off the top of the library, which could provide a reprieve from the Auriok Champion, assuming that it's sitting by itself at some point. But as it stands, I'm looking at that Renin 6 and trying to get this would foothills back at some point. I want to get this Tarmogoyf on the battlefield. I've got a little bit of a back and forth here if I'm Logan Nettles on what to do this turn.
Well, the Auriot Champion's just a big problem here because it's a buffer for that Liliana the Veil. There's a lot of things in Logan's hand that can't kill it. And now anything that Logan could do this turn just curves MJ into the apparition because it's either a Tarmogoyf or it's a Renin 6. You can't play a removal spell. I guess you could play Kroxa this turn, but that's just a really mopey turn. I mean, that's just 2 mana, choose and discard a card. Might be better than the alternatives because you know about the Skyclave apparition and all your alternative lines just put a big target onto the battlefield.
Yeah, and interestingly, we have to note here that Logan's not under significant pressure. The Auric Champion's a 5 card, but it is only 1 power.
No, it's more of an issue of it's just makes what was otherwise a pretty smooth curve a lot more awkward.
Right. And currently Logan Nettles with no more lands in hand either. So yeah, I like this. Gonna go with the Kroxa here. This is the line that plays around the information that Logan knows about Michael Jacobs' hand. And it will be a potentially annoying effect, even if it is going to take away the worst card in hand for Michael.
Yeah, it's maybe not the ideal time for this, but it's better than all the alternatives. The Skyclave apparition in hand that's known gives Logan an incentive to just use your mana as productively as possible in a way that does not put something onto the battlefield. And this is where you go from there.
Is he getting rid of it?
Well, maybe, because you want to keep your mana and Collected Company rolled up. And if Logan's play next turn is either Tarmogoyf or Renin 6 or something similar, then the coast is clear for you just to slam your Collected Company. You could discard the Windswept Heath, but there's a risk there, which is you don't have land number 4 rolled up, and if you miss out for a while, Logan could start picking apart your cards and making the game about a Tarmogoyf race where he's a lot more comfortable playing.
Ooh, it does look like he's going to go for the Heath, which means that if he plays his land next turn, oh no, sorry, he hasn't actually decided yet. He's very much in the tank here. Let's see what he does. It was the apparition. He is going to prioritize his lands in the Collected Company, and look at this Heliod off the top.
Well, that's the perfect payout here for MJ.
Wow.
He went with the conservative approach, wanted to make sure that he had land number 4 rolled up, and now that Collected Company just it's likely to produce. There's so many sequences that just end the game outright from here, and MJ's got it all sewn up with land number 4 still in hand.
Wow, that worked out beautifully for Michael Jacob, especially considering that there's no land drop here for Logan. Wow, and the Spike Feeder just cold off the top of the library. Why sweat it?
Yeah, I guess. So it's good to know that all that decision making was sort of made irrelevant by the back-to-back off of the top of MJ's deck here. But I think I still think he sequenced this all very, very well.
Oh, he's still going to go for Collected Company, it looks like. All right. And he sees Auric Champion and a redundant Heliod. Also a Walking Ballista, which wouldn't do anything either.
Right.
So what's the thinking here, I wonder?
I don't know if there's a threat of something getting broken up. I mean, as this stands, this is still a mighty good consolation prize here, in part because the Heliod's turned on and none of these creatures can die. So your devotion count's super stable, and you can just take the Renin 6 off the battlefield if you so choose.
This is a lot of damage coming in here, thanks to the Auric Champions. 9 damage available now to Michael. So he can slam for 5. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, I think the reason not to go for it there is I think maybe Fatal Push breaks. In any case, this is so overwhelming that it's kind of renders it irrelevant if Michael's playing around some sort of fringe outcome.
Yeah, he has now the board in a very, very good position for him. It's hard to imagine Logan coming up with any way to get out of this mess.
Right, because if you remove a counter off the feeder and Logan goes, okay, in response, Bolt or Fatal Push, you're at a dead end, and you just have to lose the feeder. So this way he has a lot more cushion. The collecting company is likely to produce such an overwhelming advantage anyway.
And what we have here is desperation time for Logan Nettles. Oh, look at that. Wow. It was actually the Heliod that ended up going away. It looks like Michael likes his chances here to just pick up the win. 7. Yeah, that's exactly lethal with the Gavany Township. And he can just ignore Liliana and finish the game. Michael Jacob wins the first match. The modern match goes to MJ. He had his combo deck. When he won games, he didn't even bother with it. He just had a solid sideboard, cards on the battlefield, and just was able to grow them big enough to take care of business. Really impressive victory for him there, as he was able to just kind of chew through whatever it is that Logan Nettles threw at him.
Yeah, I think a problem there from Logan's side was it wasn't just Heliod. Oriod Champion and Scavenging Ooze also turned out to be really problematic cards the way those games played out. I was pessimistic about Logan's chances just of beating Heliod, but if you're going to struggle that much with sort of the second wave down of what MJ's deck has to provide, the matchup's going to be a really big struggle, and that's what you saw right there.
And that's what that was. Michael Jacob wins the modern part of our opening matches. We are going to go to the second match, which is going to be Pioneer. First, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back with that, though, right after this. And welcome back to coverage here at the Magic Online Championships. Marshall Sutcliffe with Patrick Sullivan. We have one match down, and it was Michael Jacob who picked up the win there in Modern. Now, that means that it's time for us to transition over to the Pioneer part of our broadcast here. And what that means is the players are going to grab their Pioneer decks, log in, get all set up on there. The way that the play draw works here for the second one is like normal. If you lost that first match, then you get to decide here. So it would be Logan on the play for this one. Let's take a look at the deck list and see what the players have brought to the table for Pioneer. Logan Nettles, king of mid-range, perhaps. He loves these, Thoughtseize kind of mid-range decks, and this one is Sultai for Pioneer.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of the best hits that the format has to offer as far as playing a controlling, grinding, card advantage sort of game goes. Uro obviously glues the whole thing together and traverse the Ovenwald along with ways to fill up the graveyard to enable Delirium. Gives the deck the opportunity to have a little bit of a tutor package as well. But the core of the deck is card advantage, removal spells, way to attrition out your opponent, and then much like he attempted to do in the Modern portion with Jund, win with the leftovers.
That's right. In this case, this one's got built-in leftovers in the fridge, and boy, they're even better the second time around. Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, is sitting there, help develop your mana, get you a card, buffer your life total, and then late in the game, GG, right? You stick an Uro and things get completely out of hand. On the other side, though, we see a much different take here from MJ. Michael Jacob has brought mono green planeswalkers to the battlefield.
And the core of this deck is Nykthos, Shrine of Nyx alongside Elvish Mystic and Land of War Elves. That gives you a base for accelerating your mana. And from there, the marquee payoffs are your planeswalkers in Vivian, Nissa, and Karn, the Grid Creator. Elder Gargaroth stands as a relatively new addition to this deck to give you something really good to ramp into. But the core of this deck is just generating a lot of mana and then leveraging that mana to play really powerful planeswalkers.
Right. And that's exactly what Michael's going to be hoping to do as he's trying to be the quicker deck, right? It's actually a similar matchup in that way, right? In that it's on Logan to stop Michael from doing what he's doing, get things kind of the dust settling, and then finish it up with the leftovers, as you put it. Now, before we get down to the match, we did have a chance to chat with Michael Jacob yesterday. Let's hear from him now.
Congratulations on making the finals, MJ.
Thank you. I got a little bit lucky in that last one on the draw, but I'm happy it happened.
So how are you feeling heading into the finals? You got any nerves? Cool as a cucumber? What's it like over there?
I'm sort of excited that Logan won, because I'd much rather play against his decks than Oliver's. Oliver's Path to Exiles from the. Because that was the biggest thing, is that like in the previous match, Ariok Champion was so hard to deal with. His removal was bolts, but Oliver had Path to Exiles, so that would have been bad for me. Fortunately, we're playing against Jund, who has it's a much better matchup for me in Modern, and I think the Pioneer matchup is about even. So I'm actually not sure which format that he'll take. I actually did play against him in the rounds in Modern, and I did win that one. So I guess I'm confident.
So you're hoping? Are you hoping more for Modern if he chooses the third one?
I think I'm looking for Modern, just because I think Jund is not as well suited to deal with as many life as I can get. Whereas in Pioneer, I could just get Urod out. I mean, everybody can just get Urod out, so I don't really want to deal with that.
So what's it like for you when you're playing in these matchups, these high stakes matches over there? Do you find yourself like commentating along like you would during a stream, or is it just very quiet?
Yeah, I do actually. I'm actually doing local recordings to do. I was going to put them on my YouTube and then talk about it after. I'm going to do a stream after the PT is over, so I'll be talking about it then, and that's how I'll talk about the games and what I was thinking about at the time, and what I was trying to play around and stuff. And it's pretty good content.
I love it. Can't stop, won't stop.
Yeah.
So your player profile photo has been a big hit in chat all weekend long, and I'd be remiss here if I didn't ask you to please recreate that iconic pose for us.
Let's see. I'm not sure if I can do it here. Let's.
You got to get it just right. Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much for indulging us. Michael Jacob, best of luck to you in the finals.
Thanks.
You gotta love it. He had the pose of a champion there, and we'll see if he can become just that. If MJ's able to win this round in Pioneer against Logan Nettles, he will be the winner of the tournament. What do you make of his chances to do so, Patrick?
I think MJ is behind in this matchup, not catastrophically so, but I think a card that we haven't spoken very much about in Logan's list that's going to be big trouble here for MJ if it shows up is Jace Vryn's Prodigy. It's kind of been slept on a little bit in this tournament because we had so much Boros Wizards and that's not really a place where that card shines. But MJ is not very good at dealing with small utility creatures. And the fact that Logan is able to pair that with so much cheap removal and discard, if that card shows up, it's big trouble. He also has a couple copies of Murderous Rider that can manage some of the Planeswalkers. Unlike some of the other matches we've watched, MJ is not. It doesn't really have a lights out target to go get with Card the Great Creator. He's not playing against some graveyard strategy where you can just go get a Gravedigger's Cage. He's not playing against some beatdown deck where you go get Sky Sovereign. That card really just doesn't pull very much weight here. So, like I said, I don't think the matchup's catastrophic for MJ by any stretch. His draws of acceleration to Planeswalkers will be good enough some amount of the time, but the combination of discard, removal, and Jace Vryn's Prodigy, I think, makes this a comfortably favorable matchup for Logan.
Yeah, interesting dynamics with the way that we have the top four set up here as well. So I mentioned it before, but Logan, having lost the match, will get to choose play draw. And boy, MJ would love to slam the door on this thing right here and right now, because if he can't and Logan's able to beat him, we'll play a match 3 to decide our champion, and Logan will be the one who gets to decide what format that match would be in. That could be an advantage to him if he feels like one format or the other advantages him significantly. So with that said, the players are ready. Let's head on down to the next match here in the finals. And welcome back to coverage here at the Magic Online Championship. Marshall Sutcliffe with Patrick Sullivan. We are in the second match of a potential 3-match finals, but we're going to find out right now if this is going to be a 2 or a 3, because Michael Jacob is up a match over Logan Nettles. Logan fighting for his tournament life. This is Pioneer, mono green Planeswalkers in the hands of MJ. Bottom part of your screen, that's Jabberwocky. Logan Nettles playing Sultai midrange.
I don't know exactly where we're at vis-a-vis mulligans. Both of these hands are a little bit on the sketchy side, but probably not any that you would throw away. MJ's hand a little bit slow here, but some stuff to do. Logan does have the option of keeping his hand, traversing for a swamp, and sort of slowly but surely getting off the ground. But it's a hand with not that much ceiling and a fairly low floor if he should miss off that Satyr Wayfinder.
And it looks like Michael decided to take a mulligan here. This hand looks like it's got a bit more action than the other one, though.
Yeah, this is a really nice hand. Man acceleration and some card drawing, some selection. Really strong mulligan here from MJ. I thought that initial hand was going to be kept in. This is a substantially better 6 than the 7 he was just looking at.
Yeah, you see the Elvish Mystic to kick things off, and then he has the Llanowar Visionary. He can cast the next turn if he'd like. He also has options with Oath of Nissa, Vivian, and then it looks like the Vivian's going to be the card put on the bottom. So he recognizes he can skip over the 4 and just get right to the 5s here if he'd like.
Yeah, and if Logan picks him apart with removal spells, the Vivian's the softest card in the hand. So I like getting rid of that one also to sort of protect yourself from the downside risk.
All right, decision time already here for Nettles. You got to figure that he's got to start getting these black cards out of his hand, as he can only cast 1 per turn. There's Jace Vryn's Prodigy. He has the Satyr Wayfinder, which he'd love to use to go find some more lands and keep things rolling. And that looks like it may be what he's going to do here. Uh-oh, a little too much Jace, perhaps. Let's see if he can find a land here with the Wayfinder.
Yeah, a land that makes blue and black mana and then allows him to cast the Thoughtseize this turn and then sets him up for Jace plus Fatal Push next turn would be really great. Like I said, this was the risk of the hand, is there is a very low floor here that can be realized if that Wayfinder misses.
Yeah, he's been able to keep them at bay. Okay, it didn't miss, but it did not hit black mana. It's just a breeding pool. Still, at least got the blue part of the deal sealed up.
Yeah, you would love to have cast one of those black spells in hand the previous turn, but it's not a bad consolation prize. Being able to cast, your Jace plus discard or removal spell next turn.
And the Heartless Act killing the Elvish Mystic really did kind of throw things off here for Michael, whose turn is going to be Oath of Nissa plus the Llanowar Visionary. He's still cruising forward with his game plan, but there's not a Nissa on the battlefield at this point.
No, but still not a bad position. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you are able to play Nissa on a battlefield that's essentially neutral, your opponent doesn't have any ways to attack or block, that typically generates an overwhelming advantage. Most honest decks cannot slog through Nissa being activated every single turn unless there's a lot of punchback on the other side.
That's right. So a critical Thoughtseize here can take away Nissa Who Shakes the World, but look at this, double Voracious Hydra and an Elvish Mystic. And once again, we may find ourselves in that position that we're so familiar with where the leftovers are taken over.
Well, it's tough. That hand was bad news for Logan. He's compelled to get rid of the Nissa on the spot because that's going to be way too much for where the game's at right now. That said, Logan's hand is strangely the leftovers are strangely long on creatures that line up very poorly against the Voracious Hydra. So he's kind of just got to just chill out for a second and set up a hand that could play through it. Maybe he plays Tireless Tracker next turn and plays a land knowing full well that the Voracious Hydra is going to tag it. But that hand was not good news for Logan.
All right, he sides with Jace Vryn's Prodigy before passing the turn back. We're in the upkeep here, and oh boy, the Garg Dad, Elder Gargaroth off the top of the library here for Michael.
Yeah, not exceptional in this matchup with Logan having so many clean ways to answer it, but it's hard for it to be too bad once it's on the battlefield. Mm-hmm. I imagine though that this Jace is threatening enough that priority one is just the Voracious Hydra and taking care of this issue.
And it makes sense, right? The Jace is ready to transform. Just one activation would have it flipped, and you can see there's Heartless Act, reverse the Ulvenwald, Thoughtseize in the graveyard there that Jace could easily get back next turn, and Michael has none of it. He's going to play a 3/4 Hydra. It's going to gobble up the Jace. Interesting. Watery Grave off the top. There's another Jace. There's a Fatal Push, and there's a Tireless Tracker here for Nettles.
Yeah, I mean, you can tracker, play your land, use the Fatal Push to get rid of the Hydra. Presumably, your Tireless Tracker is killed by the Hydra that you know about in hand, but you have a clue for your trouble. And more importantly, now the coast is semi-clear for Jace. This is a long ways away, and a lot of things can go wrong in the interim, especially if MJ finds a Planeswalker. But there's a way to sort of wiggle around what you know about in hand to get yourself to a spot where you at least have a clue and a look at something to improve your circumstances. And if everything breaks right, you might be able to get Jace unlocked and start rolling down a hill there with some card advantage.
Does Logan have to use the Fatal Push now on the Hydra because of the land there, whatever it's called? Nykthos. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, if you're, there's one case which is just if it's going to be bad if you're going to do it anyway, you might as well. There's the other case where if you know that the second Hydra is going to be the bigger one of the two, that you save the push for that.
It's also the one that would kill the tracker.
Right.
And so he does know about it. It's just you let him have Nykthos mana here too, so it's a trade-off. There's
some risk, right? Like it's possible that MJ draws a Vivian, let's say, and now all this mana and presence on the battlefield is something maybe you could have mitigated a little bit by using it up front. But I think, Logan's in a bad enough position right now that he can't really play around the best top decks that MJ has. He sort of has to beat the cards that he already knows about because that's going to be tough enough to do. And in that context, I think it makes a lot of sense to save the Fatal Push for the second Hydra, which is going to be the larger one.
That's right. And of course, that's the one that's going to threaten the tracker. I don't know what the tracker's role is going forward in this game, but I have seen Tireless Trackers do very good work if the game gets to go even remotely long. So we'll see if it can stick on the battlefield and maybe have an effect here as well. You mentioned the Jace Friends Prodigy, slow, right? Next turn play it, then the next turn transform it and fire off a Heartless Act on Gargaroth or whatever it ends up needing to be done. But that is a long way off here. The good news for Logan, he's at 18. He's not, he can take some lumps.
And the good news for Logan, too, is MJ's deck from this position is a little prone to flooding out. There aren't that many impactful cards to draw here. So even though, as you mentioned, the runway is pretty long for him to get to the point where Jace is unlocked and now I'm starting to do this stuff, there is a reasonable chance here that MJ's just going to draw like a land and a mana creature that doesn't really amount to very much. The top of his deck, the best cards that he has, as always, will be hard to beat. But there's a realistic sequence of draws from MJ. You don't have to get that lucky for him to not add that much. And Logan's at 18. He does have some life to play with here.
So Michael's setting up a turn where he gets to play the Hydra, though it's the smallest version, which would actually trade for the tracker. But assuming that Logan kills it, he still has 3 mana floating and can to deploy the Gargaroth after this.
Yeah, I think MJ's a little suspicious of that 1 black mana.
Yeah. I think he knew it was up. So there you go. Gargaroth on the battlefield, 3-4 in the red zone. Big top decks coming up for both players. Logan's line here. He finds a breeding pool, so he doesn't have a whole lot to do other than maybe crack the clue. There it is. Okay, it's another land, so it's going to be Jace Friends Prodigy this turn, and he has to really hope that Michael doesn't do more than he's already got because Logan's barely keeping his head above water as it is.
But the good news is that this Tireless Tracker is the second biggest creature on the battlefield. It's not like MJ has great attacks next turn besides the Gargaroth.
That's right. And look at this. Uro into hand. Okay, there's Karn. Now, you mentioned that Karn isn't the most impactful in the matchup. Still a good top deck here for Michael?
Yeah, well, it depends. We're going to have to check the mana
he's
here.
Looking, look.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so he's not bottlenecked on mana. I mean, I think the biggest hit, that Tireless Tracker is a 5/4. I mean, you can get Sky Sovereign to knock out the Jace. That's not shabby. And then the Sky Sovereign's a problem going forward. I don't know if he has anything really beyond that is that strong. You would love to have, if that Tireless Tracker was still a 4/3, I think it's a no-brainer that you just go ahead, Karn, Sky Sovereign, take care of it. With that off the table, you might want to look at something else. But the Sky Sovereign's still very strong here as a way to remove Jace and also sort of unlock some of these creatures that are currently bricked by the Tireless Tracker. You have these 1/1s and 2/2s that can't really attack, but they are very good for crewing. And the Sky Sovereign has kind of implied value over a longer haul.
Gets really interesting here with the Gargaroth as well. That could provide another card for Michael Jacob. If he attacks with it, it does open up the possibility of a double block here from Tireless Tracker and Satyr Wayfinder. It really depends on how much Logan Nettles values keeping the tracker on versus getting the Gargaroth off the battlefield from that point.
Well, if you Karn for Sky Sovereign first, you're pretty happy with the double block because that's going to clear out everything. And then it's going to be your battlefield of like, let's call it a beast off the Gargaroth, a Sky Sovereign, and all this stuff. So blocking is really hard because Sky Sovereign takes care of a lot of it. And playing removal spells is hard because MJ's battlefield is so wide and so sort of dispersed of critical pieces that Logan's not drawing to a whole lot of good stuff.
Yeah, chat points out also incidentally that Karn, the Great Creator, shuts off clue tokens, the ability to get cards out of them. So Tireless Tracker loses a lot of value as long as Karn sits on the battlefield. Also, we have to note Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath in hand here for Logan Nettles and enough mana to both cast it and then escape it next turn if needed.
And actually enough going on in the graveyard where he could block the Gargaroth and then escape again the next turn. So
okay, wow. So yeah, and remember there's cards going into hand for Nettles throughout the course of that as well from the draw step and the Uro triggers, and these could easily provide answers as well. We've got a real game one on our hands here as we see Michael Jacob recognize Karn, the Great Creator. This is a big inflection point in this opening game. He's got his sideboard opened up trying to figure out, is there something I can do that can put me way ahead in the game here?
Right. I don't know if you can do much better than Sky Sovereign in this spot. Because I mean, you could conceivably try to play like a longer game with some of the other card advantage stuff in here, but I'm worried that if that Jace Fringe Prodigy is online, it Logan just has so many good draws and sequences afforded to him.
Now, this is important. He's going to make this attack pre-combat, or excuse me, pre-Karn. And that way, Logan has to decide what to make of all of this mess. Now, when you look at the way that things are actually going with combat, you can figure it out, right? Sky Sovereign is kind of the missing piece that Logan doesn't know about currently, but might be able to figure out. Because, you know, when you see, you know, some of the smaller creatures coming in, you're kind of going, what? Why were these attack?
Right. There's really no other card that makes sense here, because if Michael is making this attack, his deck doesn't play with pump spells or anything like that. It has to be a willingness to have Tireless Tracker go in front of something small, and then Sky Sovereign finishing it off after the fact.
Now that gets really interesting, right? Because if that were to happen, there's two things that matter. One, Karn makes Tireless Tracker a lot worse. And two, that would leave Jace Fringe Prodigy on the battlefield.
But Michael, there is a risk there. Michael's perspective might just be, if Logan can't compete with size on the battlefield, it doesn't matter if the Jace is able to flash back a Fatal Push. I still have Sky Sovereign. I still have Elder Gargaroth. He's not touching any of those cards with his removal spells.
Well, doesn't he have a Heartless Act or something?
He does have a Heartless Act.
It'll help.
Still, okay. We're still talking about a pretty long.
That was interesting. Did you see what happened there?
He still just took care of the Jace.
He did. He just took the Jace out. So that poor Voracious Hydra just got thrown into the graveyard here. But Michael Jacob recognizing, you know what, the Jace was actually more important here.
Yeah, and I guess if the Karn has the clues on lockdown, the Tireless Tracker is never going to get large enough to compete with the Gargaroth, and it just might be like, now Logan's at 7. He's almost dead. The attack isn't necessarily about bluffing the Sky Sovereign. It's just push through some damage here and try to run him down before he's able to come back with something like Uro.
Right. He got in for 2 additional damage thanks to the Llanowar Visionary hitting. And there's a lot riding on this Uro here. It's Traverse the Ulvenwald off the top there for Nettles. So here comes the first stage. All right. It's a Watery Grave. He goes back up to 10. I think he's deciding what he can get away with as far as untapped versus tapped goes. Is that what we're seeing?
Well, he needs 4 mana regardless. I'm almost positive. Yeah. So because he's either got to get Uro escaped, or the other line I can think of here is Traverse for Murderous Rider, and all those lines require 4 mana. So you know it stings, but I think you got to suck it up and play that dual land untapped.
And then he can have the option on the Watery Grave here, particularly if he were to hit something that he could cast with it. Let's see. This Uro is now going to come back in again. So this knocks that whole combat math thing off and will produce a 6/6, but Sky Sovereign's on the battlefield sitting there very threatening. And here comes, it actually is a Thoughtseize. No cards in hand, though, for Michael.
It's not, the Sky Sovereign here is actually not a shabby thing to have, because you would like to knock off the Wayfinder's ability to chump block here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, also just slamming, right?
Right.
Everwalkie's down to 11. Oh, and look at this. Verdur's Gearhulk was dug up by Karn the Great Creator, and this thing's going to have +1/+1 counters handed out very graciously in just a moment.
Yeah, pretty clutch to be able to get at the Gargaroth at a minimum up to a 7/7, so the Uro doesn't trade off.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like the Sky Sovereign's going to get crewed as well, so it can pick up some counters. Wow, it picked up all of them.
It's just going over the top here, I guess.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, there's only 4 creatures, or there's total of 4 creatures to attack. That makes this lethal by a lot, especially with Sky Sovereign trigger. When you add all of that in, easy mode. Michael Jacob finds another win. He has been playing beautifully today, seeing the lines, making sure that he gets in enough damage to turn prior, and then quite convincingly picking up the victory there in game number 1 here in match 2. He's already up a match, so now Michael is 1 game away from the $50,000 and that title of Magic Online champion. Players are now hitting up the sideboards. What do we see here, Patrick? Anything of note?
Well, MJ's doesn't have much of a sideboard to work with. It's a Karn deck. Most of his sideboard is committed to bullets, and that's pretty much that. And the other side here, it looks like Logan's getting away from Traverse the Uvenwald at least a little bit. Looks like a copy of Duress is coming in, or several copies. So I mean, I assume it's just getting rid of your bad bullets and Mystic Disputes for discard and removal is the name of the game here.
Yeah, the mono green deck has some tricks up its sleeve, but a lot of what is going on is on the battlefield. And if you can keep their board state managed, well, it turns off a lot of the stuff that they've going on. Nykthos gets a lot worse, etc.
And Logan isn't necessarily like Logan, from my perspective, doesn't need to go all in on managing creatures because he's actually capable of playing that game himself. If he can keep the planeswalkers out of the equation, Logan can, with Tireless Tracker and Uro, sort of beat the leftovers. So it's not like, oh, I have to kill every single creature that comes up. It's not that sort of thing. The Duresses here seem very good because the planeswalkers are the biggest problem, I think, by far, from Logan's perspective.
And he certainly has a lot of removal at his disposal. The Disfigures come in. He's got the Fatal Pushes. He's got a Noxious Grasp, the pair of Murderous Riders in there as well. He even has 2 copies of Reclamation Sage that he's brought in here.
Yeah, you still got to be mindful. I mean, I think it's all well and good to bring in those cards because Logan has a lot of stuff in the deck that's worse, but you can go too far down the rabbit hole of killing every creature that comes up and not having enough action left for the planeswalkers. So you got to balance that a little bit. The Disfigures, the Fatal Pushes, they're great and you don't cut them, but you don't want your deck to be like 40 copies of that because then any planeswalker that shows up and you're in a lot of trouble. To that end, you also need to leave in enough creatures that you have a chance of being able to brawl with the planeswalkers should they show up. You kill away the blockers and you clear a path for your Tireless Tracker. You want to make sure that you have some chance of leveraging that angle should the game go a certain way.
And, you know, to that point, Logan did leave a couple of Heartless Acts in the board there. So he agrees with you that you don't need literally every removal spell you could possibly get your hands on. And he has some kind of medium stuff in there. You know, the Shark Typhoons aren't exactly, you know, devastating here. I'm sure he wants those to help manage planeswalkers as well. But yeah.
Yeah, big thing. You hit it around the head, I think. It's just the Shark Typhoons are pretty low opportunity cost, but they give Logan more of a hope of being able to manage a planeswalker the turn it enters the battlefield. 2 turns, you know, Nissa goes up once, Vivian goes up once. You can handle that stuff with creature removal. The second turn, you can't really manage that stuff with creature removal anymore. You got to find a way to actually kill the planeswalker inside of combat or with something like Murderous Rider.
Looks like both of our players are mulliganing to 6 here. And I have to say, I like Logan's side of the equation. A little bit of a slow one here for Michael.
Yeah, I think that if both players are mulliganing, that's advantageous to Logan and typically advantageous to decks that play Uro. When both players are low on resources, you often are like just kind of trading off, not really getting off the ground. And Uro is really powerful in those kind of games. It's less powerful in games where it's just about doing really powerful synergistic stuff. And those games usually require both players to have a lot of cards.
Look at this turn 2, though. He's going to go Burning Tree, Oath of Nissa. Maybe an elf.
But this is a pretty good turn for Logan. Also, you have a Fatal Push to kill something. Your Uro's ready to go. Your Shark Typhoon can trade with the Burning Tree Emissary or threaten a Planeswalker, and then you have a lot of stuff in your graveyard. Michael's out of cards, and you're ready to go to Uro.
That's right. So there it is. Fatal Push to kill one of the Burning Trees, and now we're going to see Uro hit the battlefield, which is going to charge up the Shark Typhoon coming up in a little bit. Now, the good news for Michael is that he did find a powerful card, a Planeswalker, and in fact, drew one here as well. The bad news for him, needs that 4th mana by next turn to be able to start deploying them.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a huge draw step here coming in a second. If MJ misses the 4th land drop, his hand's nothing going on, and Logan's ready to sort of pull away with his leftovers. If he finds land number 4, Logan's cards might not be good enough.
Oh, it's so close. It's a mana source, but it's a Llanowar Elves off the top, which is going to cost Michael a full nother turn and allow Logan Nettles to deploy one of his 2 Shark Typhoons on cycle. Of course, Michael Jacobs like, not falling for that one. But still, Logan gets to run out a 3/3 flyer here, and we know how good those can be against Planeswalkers.
Pick up a card here, and
Oh, there's a Murderous Rider too, Patrick.
more answers for Planeswalkers. The graveyard's starting to get filled up, and this is the way that Logan wants to have this game go. If I can knock away your synergies and keep the Planeswalkers from being overwhelming, if we're just going card for card, Logan's going to get the better end of that.
He's going to come in with the Shark here and just pass the turn back. Another Llanowar Elves off the top of the library is no good here for Michael, but he has the 4 mana for either Vivian or Karn the Great Creator. He can choose what he wants to do from here.
Yeah, missing last turn really set the whole tempo of the game off from Michael's perspective. The Vivian could have gone up, and the Shark, it would have taken a long time to be able to knock it down. The way that it goes this way, you're cycling a second copy of Shark Typhoon. The Vivian doesn't have much to show for it, and Logan's leftovers here are exceptional.
Right, he gets to cycle Shark Typhoon and kill Vivian with the double attack here. Vivian ended up being 4 mana, put a couple of counters on my creatures. That's not how you're going to get ahead in a game of Pioneer. Here comes Satyr Wayfinder as well to act as perhaps a chump blocker to stem the bleeding, as we do see that Logan's life total's down to 11, and Michael's trying his best to apply pressure, but this one's really started to fall apart here from Michael's perspective.
Yeah, once the battlefield looks like this, MJ doesn't have a whole lot of recourse because he can't catch up with his Planeswalkers. They're not going to survive for longer than 1 turn. And any of the creatures that he draws are not going to be better than Uro or even these Sharks. So if he's not drawing the creatures, he's not drawing the Planeswalkers, well, that's the whole deck. So there's nothing else really to do from that point.
You did describe the contents of Michael Jacobs' library quite succinctly there, and this one looks like it's truly slipped away. Now he's looking in his sideboard for cards that he may be able to dig up with Karn the Great Creator that could give him some chance, anything to try to come back here from this deficit.
I mean, there's
can't be one, right?
All these cards are just on too long of a horizon. He doesn't have all the time in the world. He's going to die in 2 turns. So against that backdrop, I'm not sure what you're supposed to go get.
He can empty out his hand here, but it doesn't look like it's going to be enough. Let's see what he finds. He's going to go for Karn the Great Creator. We've seen some very creative lines from Michael Jacob, and he's just going to go for Sky Sovereign here. Can't cast it just yet. And there's a Dress in hand now for Logan as well. It's all coming up Nettles.
MJ playing hand up, and it's not like his deck has much in the way of tricks anyway. So Logan can pick apart the Karn, deal a bunch of damage. He's even drawn Duress to handle the Sky Sovereign if he so chooses.
Now he can use Murderous Rider as a backup plan, so he's in a beautiful position. And I have to say, Patrick, really impressed by Shark Typhoon here with what we talked about leading into the game, its ability to help manage Planeswalkers. This is going to be the second Planeswalker that these Sharks have dealt with.
Yeah, once Michael gets kind of behind the pacing of the game in this way, his Planeswalkers go from the best cards in his deck to not really a whole lot to do. Nissa's ceiling right now is make 1 land a 3/3. Vivian's ceiling is lower than that. Karn's, I would argue, is lower than that. And those kind of effects are just not going to be good enough to catch Michael up.
And Logan Nettles is going to go for the classic here. You double block, I kill one of your blockers, get the old 2-for-1 the hard way. There's a Duress to take away the Sky Sovereign that Logan knew about. And he's even just going to go ahead and cast Murderous Rider. What a turn there for Logan Nettles, putting the flourishing mark on game number 2 as he picks it up. Again, this is huge. Logan is fighting for his tournament here. If he loses game 3, we are done. We're handing the trophy and the $50,000 to Michael Jacob, and we're done for the day. Logan wants this. He dedicated so much time to Magic Online that he is in scrap mode. For Michael, tantalizingly close again. He's got the big advantage with the match 1 victory, and he's just looking to finish off Logan. As I mentioned before, if he can't, he's got to be a little concerned because they get to go to a third match where Logan gets to pick what he feels his best matchup is. Now, as it stands, Logan doesn't have a massive advantage in either, right?
I think he's much better here than he is
Right.
in Modern. Much better here.
It
And you have to
definitely
feel
feels
that-
like here, but is he favored here? Is it by a significant amount?
I don't think it's significant, but I'd rather be on Logan's side of things.
Okay.
I feel like he's got enough responses to the best cards in Michael's deck, and Michael's second best wave of cards is not going to be good enough to get it done. So,
Right. So this is
I mean,
huge.
that game potentially looks very different if Michael has mana number 4 on time. Not necessarily the case because Logan's hand was very strong, but once that you had that little slip in the action, Michael was pretty much done for on the spot because the Planeswalkers couldn't play catch up, and nothing else really amounts to very much. So there are these key inflection points in the game where can Michael resolve a Planeswalker in a spot where Logan is not in a position to assail it on the way back. If that does happen, Michael is a huge, huge favorite. If he can't get the game to that spot, or he happens to not draw his Planeswalkers or whatever else, then Logan's going to win the vast majority of the time.
All right, let's see if Michael Jacob has the hand that could take him to the trophy. As we say in the business, that ain't it.
I mean, yeah. Also, just MJ has not had one of his explosive hands yet. Man acceleration.
And this isn't either.
Hasn't found it.
He's going to 5 here, I think, right?
You can't. I don't think this hand is keepable. I don't even know what the set of. Well.
Oh, he kept it.
I'm just worried that I don't know what the set of draw steps that makes this hand palatable is.
Right, because your best case here is to hit a land off of Oath, draw one for the turn, but then you just go Emissary, nothing.
Yeah, you just have to draw a bunch of lands in a row, is the short of it.
Yeah, it is very powerful, right? I mean, this does have 2 4-mana Planeswalkers and an Elder Gargaroth. That is a lot to throw at Logan, but my worry is letting Logan set up, because as we saw, once Logan gets things under him, it is very difficult to keep up.
It's interesting, too. You saw Michael there take the Nykthos instead of the Forest, and you might ask, well, why would you do that with Burning Tree Emissary in your hand? And the answer is Michael's line of play already presupposes he's drawing 3 forests in a row. So once you're there, the Nykthos has a higher ceiling.
That's interesting. Here comes the Jace Vryn's Prodigy. Now, the Tormod's Crypt could throw a little bit of a wrench in the works, but just the ability to continually go through your library's pick. Wow, Llanowar Elves is not what Michael needed here. There is a fatal push on the other side of the battlefield, and with that missed land drop, Logan is highly incentivized to fire that off here.
Right, especially because, now Michael is 2 mana away from being able to play a Planeswalker. So there's no risk of, well, you killed this, but now it unlocks something worse. All the mana gets pinned this way, and you're not at any risk of anything bad really happening.
Super tough here, too, because the Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath allows Logan to do both this turn, kill the Llanowar Elves, and get the advantage from Uro. And Michael's going to have to keep an eye on that graveyard there, as it's starting to become quite a resource here for Logan with both Jace Vryn's Prodigy, yikes, and also Uro in the yard. The well-timed Crypt will set him back, at least on that part of his game plan. But boy, Michael has much bigger problems than that. He just found another copy of Vivian Arcbow Ranger, a disaster for him.
Yeah, I mean, once Logan's in the spot where he's pitching copies of Shark Typhoon, MJ's got to know that Logan's hand can't get much better than what it is right now.
That's right. Logan has great options here as well. He could Wayfinder into a land, then play Tracker. He could just play Atris. He's got Duress and Shark Typhoon. He also has the loot ability at the ready here from Jace. So many options, and they all look pretty good from here.
Yeah, the part of the safe part of all this for Logan is it's not even like MJ's threatening anything good should he draw a land. There's nothing that gets unlocked at the point where you have 3 mana. It's 4 as the flashpoint. So Logan can spend a turn just setting up shop here as efficiently as he wants to, and know that there's not any chance that Michael comes back with something threatening.
So he's going to go for Atris, Oracle of Half-Truths, and let's see what Michael wants to show him here. It looks, I saw a Murderous Rider and a land as well as a Thoughtseize. So the Thoughtseize, oh, well, he's still dancing here. Would be the revealed card, it looks like, from here. Wouldn't be surprised to just see Logan take whatever's in the 2 pile. That works well with Jace's in addition.
Yeah, I mean, I think that any 2-card pile is better than a 1-card pile. All these cards are of roughly equal value. If I'm MJ, I'm not really putting any premium on the Thoughtseize here because your hand's all spells that you can't cast, so who really cares?
Right. And it's kind of funny because he showed him the Thoughtseize, and Logan's like, no. I'm just snapping off the 2-card pile here. Here comes Jace Frid's Prodigy. And this actually does force the issue, doesn't it? There's already 4 cards in yard.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're going to have the Tormod's Crypt of your deck, it's for spots like this, but it's not like Logan's really leaning on his graveyard to be able to have enough resources to operate.
Yeah. Also, you could make the argument that Jace as a planeswalker is less effective on this board if you crypt away their graveyard, like in response to Jace doing something here, for example.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no way this goes bad for Logan. The ball is in Michael's court.
True.
The ball's in Michael's court, but whatever he decides to do, you're not that invested in the outcome.
Yeah, that's probably going to do it there. Anissa Who Shakes the World off the top of the library, and the mana just will not work for Michael Jacob. He just cannot seem to put together this draw. It was a keep that needed to find a bunch of lands and hasn't. And that's really the story. It needed to. It absolutely had to find lands turn after turn and wasn't able to do so. And now he finds himself way, way too far behind. And even lands at this point wouldn't be enough. Good God. Well, I guess if you're just going to draw all of them, you may as well just keep drawing them here. And that is Jabberwocky winning the match and evening things up at 1 match apiece. Logan Nettles and Michael Jacob are going to play a match 3. And we think it's going to be in Pioneer, right?
I believe so. I think Logan demonstrated a lot of strength in that matchup. I think the modern matchup looked really shaky for him. Like we mentioned when we went into that match, Heliod's just kind of a card his deck's not equipped to handle consistently. And especially after what we just watched there, I imagine we'll be returning to Pioneer shortly.
Yeah, that does seem to be the case. As again, the way this works, if you're just tuning in, first off, thank you. We appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us today on Magic Online Championship Sunday. We've got 2 players left from the 24 that we started with. And the way it works is the higher seeded player gets to choose the format if there is a match 3 needed. And in this case, we definitely need a 3rd match. And that is going to be Logan deciding what he wants to do. We're going to let him make that decision. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll have the deciding match of the finals. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to coverage here of the Magic Online Championships. Marcel Sutcliffe with Patrick Sullivan bringing you coverage of the finals. Now, these are played best 2 out of 3 matches. And as is customary, we are going to a third match. Again, I explained it before, but for anybody just tuning in, the format of that match actually gets to get decided by the higher seed coming in, who is Logan Nettles. He has chosen, and he has in fact chosen Pioneer. So he is going to be taking the Sultai mid-range deck against Michael Jacob, who is playing mono green Planeswalkers once again. He just picked up the win in the match there, winning back-to-back games, both facing elimination and getting the job done for Jabberwocky. And we saw MJ get so close to that trophy and the prize, and now he needs to resettle himself and play one more match to try to get 2 wins and secure the prize. Let's take a quick look at the deck list before we head down. Just a quick gander to get an idea for what they are before we get down to the match here. Michael Jacob, again, playing this mono green deck. You described it pretty succinctly in our last match there, Patrick. He's like, well, there's creatures and planeswalkers.
That's pretty much it. You got some lands, you got Oath of Nissa, which finds more of the same, and that's the whole deck. Mag acceleration, some powerful things to do when you have Nykthos and you're really not encumbered by mana costs anymore. And even if you don't go totally wild with the amount of mana that you're generating, with cards like Nissa, Karn the Great Creator, Voracious Hydra, and Vivian Arpone Ranger, plenty of good stuff to do once you have 4, 5, or 6 mana.
That's right. Now on the other side is going to be the mid-range deck of choice for the format, which is Sultai mid-range. It's got a lot going on with it. It has Delirium going on. It has the whole Uro stuff, right, that you can do. It's kind of this interesting combination of filling up your graveyard for Delirium stuff, but then emptying it back out to get Uro on the battlefield and doing a whole lot in between.
Right, but a lot of this stuff, it's kind of, you're not super leveraged on any one resource. If you happen to fill up your graveyard for Delirium, that's great. If not, you need a lot of mana to work with, and Traverse can go find a land for you. If you want to fill up your graveyard for Chase or Uro and then drain all that stuff out, it all kind of washes out the same way at the end. As long as you can draw your extra cards, accumulate your extra resources, pick off your opponent's key cards with things like Murderous Rider and Thoughtseize, even if some of these resources are kind of at odds with one another, the deck is super synergistic. And Satyr Wayfinder and Jace from Strategy, very effective at filling up graveyard. Even some stuff on the margins like Shark Typhoon and Fable Passage do work in setting up your cards that require the graveyard as a resource.
That's right. Okay, the players are ready. They are set for Pioneer. We've got one match to decide this whole tournament. Who's it going to be? Michael Jacob, or is it going to be Logan Nettles? We're going to find out right now. And welcome back to coverage here of the Magic Online Championships. We're here for the finals, and look at this. We got Logan Nettles and Michael Jacob as they get set to battle. The turn 1 Elvish Mystic is exactly what Michael wants to see. In fact, a Hashep Oasis off the top. How does this hand look for him?
Well, this hand got very good. It was a little shaky there before for MJ, not having a second land, but now he has 4 mana, Oath of Nissa, and Planeswalkers left over, and the mana to do everything. This hand went from shaky to extremely strong on that draw step.
Wow, so Logan Nettles is going to have his hands full, no doubt about it. And take a look at his hand. It's slow. He's going to have to choose a 2-drop to play this next turn. That's about all he's going to be able to do.
Yeah, not that exciting to Heartless Act this Land of War Elf after the damage has already been done. And Satyr Wayfinder is not getting you anywhere in the short term either.
Well, let's see what he decides to do. You can see him go into the tank here on, okay, well, how does this game actually play out? What are the things that I need to worry about? What are the things that I have any agency over whatsoever here? And as you mentioned, killing the Elvish Mystic, well, you do what you got to do, but you got to figure that Logan understands that could go very poorly for him, particularly with another land for Michael, which he's got in his hand here.
Well, I mean, if you play your Satyr Wayfinder, you're not interacting at all. If you play your Heartless Act, you're down a removal spell, and Michael still has 4 mana for next turn that could be used to deploy Planeswalker. If you play Chase Fringe Prodigy, that opens you up to Voracious Hydra. So there's no safe line here. It's just sort of managing sort of the downside risk as best as possible. Um, I, I don't know if you want to call it fortunately or not for Logan. There's not one obviously right decision here based on the contents of Michael's hand. The next two turns are going to be pretty rough regardless.
Yeah, we can see the hand here and see that Nissa Who Shakes the World with the forest in hand. There's also Karn the Great Creator at the ready, as well as a Voracious Hydra. So many options here for Michael. And you got to figure that if the Nissa Who Shakes the World hits the battlefield next turn, it's just about over.
It will be hard for Logan to come back. Now, if you use the Heartless Act on the Elvish Mystic, that's the best you can do in sort of managing the short-term harm. Even then, Michael has a really powerful sequence lined up where the next turn he plays Karn the Great Creator, picks up Darksteel Citadel. Next turn, Darksteel Citadel plus Nissa. Now you have an indestructible Vigilance land that Logan's not really that equipped to take care of. So even if Logan plays this as conservatively as possible, Michael's hand is powerful enough that he's going to require a lot of help past that to be able to catch back up.
I love it. Indestructible land beatdown.
Yeah, the Darksteel Citadel kind of plays both roles where it's just a land to go get, and sometimes you want to card for mana for different reasons, but also you can combine it with Nissa to make something that's much greater than the sum of its parts.
Logan taking his time here. I think he recognizes that things have already gone poorly for him in the opener for this game, and he needs to try to find some possible conceivable route to victory here, whatever that may be. You know, the play that jumps forward, of course, is just to Heartless Act the Elvish Mystic so that at least you're doing something for the turn, and then try to set up with Uro and Tireless Tracker down the line. But boy, oh boy, this is part of the power that Michael Jacobs' deck brought to the table that we haven't got a chance to see from him over the last two games, which is just getting those mana creatures in the Wolfwillow Haven going early. He kept drawing them out of sequence. All right, it is going to be Jace Vryn's Prodigy go here from Nettles.
I think Nettles' perspective here is that there's nothing he can really do to prevent Michael from getting to his mana, especially now that Oath of Nissa revealed a forest. And if you can't cut your opponent off of mana, then killing the Elvish Mystic is pretty mopey. So you might as well make the game about something else in the short term. The Jace has some ceiling of being able to pull you ahead on resources. Unfortunately for Logan, you know, Michael kind of has all bases covered. The Voracious Hydra is the check mark on the Jace Vryn's Prodigy being a factor. And then the two Planeswalkers made it so that even if Logan had used a removal spell on the Elvish Mystic, it wouldn't have amounted to very much.
Michael's turn to go in the tank here as he decides how important is getting this Jace Vryn's Prodigy off the battlefield now versus advancing my own game plan.
Well, I think there's also a question of you can Voracious Hydra for 3. Are you better playing the Hollow first and doing it for 2, or just doing it for 3?
Oh, okay.
Because you can kill the Jace either way. It's, do you want to have a 3/4, or do you want to have a 2/3 but more mana for next turn?
Right.
I think also, you know, Michael's got to take a second here and think, because Logan took so long on that turn, it only makes sense if Logan had competing plays. Now you can say, all right, well, they're working with extra time and you can afford to Hollywood a little bit. You're not working with all the extra time in the world if you're playing at that pace. So Michael's got to respect that Logan had competing plays for that amount of mana that were at approximately as good as the Jace. So what you have to start deducing, like, what could that actually be?
Michael's going through, and if you see him talking, he's actually recording his match here for his YouTube channel. So you could, you know, assuming the recording went well and he decides to post it, you might get a chance to see this from his perspective after the fact. Oh, that's 5 mana. That looks like Nissa hitting the battlefield right here and right now. Maximum pressure coming with the forest. And they can even cast the Wolfwillow Haven if Michael would like.
Yeah, I was worried. I thought that the instinct here from Michael would just be to take care of the Jace. But I guess with Logan having no cards in graveyard, there's really no chance that the Jace flips this turn. That's just not a realistic outcome. You can afford to have him have 1 loot in exchange for, hitting for 3 this turn and then working with essentially unlimited mana for the remainder of the game if Logan doesn't have a Murderous Rider to get rid of this Nissa right now. And also, Michael doesn't have to play around Murderous Rider for this turn because of Logan's mana. He's on Breeding Pool plus Island. So even that risk is not really there for this turn.
Now, one interaction that we should pay attention to is Heartless Act and how it interacts with the lands that Nissa makes, right?
Yeah.
Can remove those counters, send it packing. All right, he's going to kick things off, though, with Jace Vryn's Prodigy activation. And he finds a redundant copy. Curious to see if Logan does prioritize getting rid of the forest.
Yeah, Logan's got some nice tools here playing over a long game, but MJ's draw is shaped up here to make this game very short.
Yeah, the key here is even if Logan can manage the short-term deficit, that Nissa is very, very scary. Although it is kind of interesting that there's only actually 3 lands on the battlefield total here, and there could be only 2 by the time Logan passes back. All right, Uro into the yard. Satyr Wayfinder is the play. And he finds a Fabled Passage off of that. So Watery Grave, go.
I guess Logan's putting a premium here on trying to get an escaped Uro onto the battlefield that can hold off the sea of 3/3s that Michael can make, and also maybe give him a chance to threaten something on the way back.
Geez, another Nissa here. Tons of mana available now for Michael.
Remember, you can also untap your land for mana and then untap with Nissa as well.
Yeah.
You get to pay an additional mana. Yeah, once it's on the battlefield, it's really rare. It's really rare that a player with Nissa is then constrained by mana for the remainder of the game. It's
just that one forest makes 4 mana.
Right.
And that's before Nissa untaps it if that's the play. That's like the best forest ever. It's just straight up makes 4 mana for tapping it. That means that if Michael would like, he could produce up to 12 mana here.
Yeah, it's not. The mana is not going to be a mitigating factor here for.
That is definitely the case. Logan can do nothing but sit and wait. We're in game number 1 of match 3. This is going to be the deciding match here in the finals. Right now, the players have already locked up $30,000 in prize money, and they're looking to get up to 50 with a match win here. Certainly the highest leverage match of either of these players' careers.
I wonder, Michael giving this a lot of thought, and I think in part because Logan's lines here have taken a long time and have been sort of modest. And I think Michael's trying to deconstruct what could be going on with Logan's hand right now. Also, we provided the extra time. Usually a Magic Online match, both players have a trust clock of 25 minutes that clicks down when they have priority. Here it's been upped, so you can afford to play a little bit more slowly, more thoughtfully. And as you mentioned, I don't know if any of these players have played a $20,000 match before, but they don't come around that often. Even if you've played them before, it's worth taking the extra minute.
Yeah, absolutely. These are some high leverage turns here as well. Early stages of game 1, we're on turn 4. And yeah, I mean, these are likely the plays that are going to determine who wins. For the most part, Michael's absolutely in the driver's seat here in the first game. Logan's doing his best to try to fight back and try to set himself up for a potential route to victory. But you can't call him ahead at this point. No doubt about that.
Well, when we watched this match before, something that was pretty telling was when Logan was in a position to manage the Planeswalkers, where the Planeswalkers weren't there, the games were pretty trivial for him to win. when he got behind the back foot a little bit against these planeswalkers, he got buried. And this game is kind of shaping up to be, I think, from the second camp.
He's got 5 mana in the mana pool here. And he's going to wake up the land. He's got 2 mana floating. And he's going to play a Karn. And Logan's like, okay, Karn, sure.
Yeah. Logan looks pretty composed here, but he knows that this is really bad news.
It's got to be the end there, right? So the last mana floating was used for the Grafdigger's Cage that Karn dug up out of the sideboard. That will turn off Uro as well. And as you mentioned, Logan took some lower impact lines there over the first 2 turns with the intention of setting up that Uro. This could just shut the door on it here.
Yeah, no, Logan kind of had all the eggs in that basket of trying to get Uro online to hold off the 3/3s and then start threatening back. And now the whole house of cards has collapsed.
And as you can see, Michael, taking his time to go through and say, okay, well, what is Logan really trying to do here? And it was pretty obvious at that point that Uro was the game plan there for Logan. And Michael said, all right, if I manage my mana, how can I best apply pressure to Logan while also shutting off his game plan? And Michael found an absolutely gorgeous line there. He was able to attack for the full 6 there, knock down Logan to 11, shut off the avenue he was going to, and then go make a 10-11 with trample. Your move.
And he's got plenty left over. He can activate Nissa again next turn. The Karn can get something off next turn too. So I think that it would be very challenging for Logan just to beat the battlefield at this point, and Michael's going to be adding more to it in the next turn.
Logan's not one to give up easily, so he's going to go through, but take a look at MJ. He knows that he's going to win this game in a beautiful position. There's just not enough cards to be able to come back. The Heartless Act does get to remove the counters here from this forest, which is going to put it and the 2 Willow Havens in the yard. So a nice step forward, but it just feels like he's too far behind at this point.
Yeah, and Logan's going to have to pretty much play face up here or tap out. So not a bad turn from Logan, but I don't think that's going to be enough to catch back up.
He uses the Transform Jace to shrink down the Voracious Hydra to only 8 power. Just a little measly.
A modest
trampler.
8.
And Michael has found another copy of Voracious Hydra that has to seal the deal here in combination with the Hash Up Oasis attacking in conjunction with the Forest plus the big Trampler, get a creature off the board. Yeah, that's lethal. Oh, he didn't get the creature off the board. Let's see what happens here. It might still just be lethal.
Well, your best blocks are there. Yeah, you had to double chump the lands. It's the best you can do.
He would take
then,
9.
And then can you activate the Oasis? I thought that was sorcery only.
I believe so. Let me double check just to be sure. Yeah, it is. You're correct, Patrick.
Again, this is all. I wouldn't worry too much about the details at this point. Logan, without something like Languish in the deck, even flashing back 2 removal spells with Jace is not going to get him out of this.
Right. So a slight misstep there, but whatever, not relevant to the outcome. Darkest Mage Michael Jacob picks up the win in game 1, and he finds himself in the exact same position he was last match. He's won the opening game, and if he can just close out one of these 2 sideboarded games, he is going to be your Magic Online champion. If he can't, trophy's going to Logan Nettles.
Right, and as you mentioned, he was here before, won game number 1 at the previous match in pretty dominating fashion, in much the same way, was just kind of able to get on the front foot on the battlefield, had a Planeswalker that went unchecked, and that accrued too much value in the short term for Logan to overcome. Post-board, it's a little bit different. Logan has a lot more spot removal to hopefully contain some of the mana acceleration from the other side of the battlefield, and maybe he can give himself the breathing space to get something like Shark Typhoon going And that card takes so much sting out of the Planeswalkers in the long term.
And we're going to have to see if a few things need to go here for Logan, right? He's got a tough hill to climb. He has to win back-to-back games. That's already difficult. And the times when he was able to win were when he had just enough disruption to keep Michael from having those explosive draws like we saw here. And that's really a key piece of the puzzle, because Logan can definitely find himself too far behind. When we saw that Logan was able to get a little bit ahead in the mid game, it was over. Like, he could capitalize on that lead very easily, as Michael had really no way to come back.
Yeah, I think it's useful to think of Michael's deck as having sort of this initial burst of extra cards, and Logan's is having a steady stream. And if the game is played on a really short timeline, Logan does not have time to take advantage of, Jace Fringe Prodigy drawing 2 or 3 cards over several turns, Uro coming back and then attacking, Shark Typhoon maybe swallowing up an attacker and then cycling. If MJ is just bursting down with Planeswalkers, you don't have time for those kind of cards to really emerge. They require too much mana. They're too slow to bear out. But if Logan can sort of blunt that early rush to prevent Michael from really getting to that point, then that steady stream of cards is a lot more powerful than what Michael's up to.
Wow, Worth's in the chat, Patrick.
Worth?
Yeah.
What up? How you doing?
He had to show up to see off the Magic Online Championship in its current form, I'd say. Nice to see you, Worth. Hope you're doing well. Worth, of course, a former pro player himself and somebody who worked on Magic Online for many, many years. In fact, led that team. Okay, here is game number 2. Michael Jacob looking to hang on. What does he have here? He has Forest Llanowar Elves and then a pair of Burning Trees.
Yeah, Michael's hand's interesting, because if your Llanowar Elf doesn't die and you draw Nykthos, it's over. Like, you're gonna have a Planeswalker on the battlefield, possibly as soon as turn 2. The hand is not that functional outside of that scenario. Now, post board, when Logan has so many more ways to sort of attrition you out, it might be better to keep these hands with this kind of a ceiling, because you mulligan, you might get a hand that just doesn't work. And it looks like MJ is willing to take the risk here and keep this hand, even though it does go the wrong way sometimes.
Yeah, he's going to take his shot, and it does look like it's going to be on the battlefield, so he can breathe a sigh of relief that it's just a Satyr Wayfinder here rather than a Fatal Push or something along those lines. Back to you, and a Forest off the top. Things getting better and better here for Michael Jacob.
Forest is not bad. It's not Nykthos. Nykthos would be like, we're giving Michael the trophy right now.
Just hand it over.
Just hand it over. But this is not bad.
Very slow start here for Logan Nettles. And you can see 2 copies of Disfigure and a Noxious Grasp got milled by that Wayfinder. Boy, he'd like to have access to those in his hand for that elf, but it's not to be. And his best play here is to run out Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath from his hand. It's going to hit the bin past the turn back, and it's a Wolfwillow Haven off the top here for Michael.
It's not a land, but it's not a bad consolation prize. And Logan's hand is quite soft, although that just changed on that draw step.
Hello, Elder Gargaroth. Was there no attacks there? What did I miss? I figured that Michael would just jam with the 2 Burning Trees, but he did not. All right. Well, Elder Gargaroth off the top of the library here for Logan. How big of a deal is this?
It's big. I mean, this is a tough play, because Logan was kind of already ruled up for this turn. Could have just gone, Tireless Tracker, land, Jace. That looks pretty good. This is actually substantially better, I think, because it manages the battlefield a little bit better. It sort of preemptively gets Logan in a spot to assail Planeswalkers, and that's probably what the game's going to be about.
By the way, we figured it out. So if he attacks, that's a chump block from the Wayfinder, and that's the card needed to be able to get Uro back in. So that's why Michael Jacob decided to hold back. I knew there was a reason. I just didn't know what it was. Llanowar Visionary hits the battlefield, and it's a Voracious Hydra. And now look at this. Elder Gargaroth on the battlefield gets to untap. And there's a Thoughtseize Boy, that's a hand there for Michael Jacob if he can deploy it.
And the nature of this game, this matchup is there's no planeswalker on the battlefield on Michael's side. How bad is it for Logan if Michael plays a planeswalker? That's how you can distill a lot of these board states. And with that Gargaroth now in a position to attack and Logan having some pretty good leftovers, a planeswalker is not that threatening. It's interesting because, Michael, we're now in match 2. We're in game number 5 of watching this particular matchup. These Vivians have been quite bad. The game's just never broken in a way where it's been about that on the battlefield. Michael's been regularly stranded with little or no creatures, but because his sideboard is 15 Karn targets, he's just got to shuffle up and go, even if some of these planeswalkers are not that great for the matchup.
In comes the Gargaroth mode, draw a card. It's going to be another land here for Nettles. No blocks on the Gargaroth. It's going to knock MJ down to 14, and Logan gets to decide how he wants to approach this turn. But boy, he has a lot of action. It looks like his first things first, though. Thought sees you, and this will give him more information about how he'd like to proceed for the turn.
Yeah, and not surprising that this is the hand from Michael here. Stranded on lands, trying to play some mana acceleration, and just a bunch of planeswalkers. No big surprise here. I think Logan's probably pretty happy to see a hand like this, where there's no threat of the Voracious Hydra being able to get large enough to threaten the Gargaroth. You can take the one-ness out of this hand, and the Vivians aren't that impactful right now. Again, all of this can become very different very quickly if Michael draws a Nykthos. That could potentially enable 2 plays in 1 turn. It could enable a Voracious Hydra that's large enough to tangle with the Gargaroth. But the rest of MJ's draws at this point are really not that strong. The Planeswalkers aren't worth a whole lot until something's happened to the Gargaroth. His hand's not that good. It requires more mana to be able to tangle with the Gargaroth. So we're really looking at Nykthos or bust from my perspective.
All right, well, here we go. Thoughtseize in the yard means that Uro can come back onto the battlefield, and that's exactly what's going to happen. An absolutely massive turn here because it also enables Jace Vryn's Prodigy. Now, it's on empty, but he can use it to find answers, and there's a forest top the top of the library for Michael. Now, it's not the Nykthos that he was hoping for, but it's got to help, right?
I think it's too little too late. That we're now at a point where the creatures on the battlefield are so large that all of the planeswalkers on MJ's side represent one and dones. You're not going to be able to leverage them over the course of multiple turns. Also, Michael's at 14. He's getting hit for 12 this turn. It's not like he has all the time in the world to set up shop to try to defend a planeswalker. And then lastly, Logan's got other stuff going on. It's not like he's just the battlefield. He's going to be drawing 2 cards a combat if he wants to from the Uro and the Gargaroth. He has Tireless Tracker plus lands to work with. So he's not even done putting more stuff out there.
Yeah, this could be insane. He could go Tireless Tracker pre-combat, have a Fabled Passage for 2 clues, get another land into play off of the Uro, so he could have 3 clues at the ready from the tracker if he chooses. And that's not including the 2 cards that he's going to draw for these attackers as well.
Yeah, the short-term outlook for Michael is quite bad, and should he find a way to wiggle himself out of that, the medium-term horizon is not that much better.
Michael Jacob is in the same position he was in before, where he won the first game of these matches and is now trying to scrap out game 2. It's not looking good. It's looking like we might get a game 3 between these 2 players to decide who's going to win this trophy. And Michael's got to be starting to gear up mentally for that, as this one looks like it's really falling apart on him.
Yeah, the one Gargaroth there was a huge draw from Logan. Michael, again, did not have his 4th mana on time, had to settle for a mana accelerator, setting up for the next turn. And it looked like Logan's turn was going to be something like Tireless Tracker, land, Jace, which is a good turn. But now you're kind of brawling on the battlefield and trying to outvalue the Planeswalkers. It's not an easy thing to do. But that Gargaroth out in front of MJ's Planeswalkers have just made it too hard for Michael to be able to get his foot established in this game. And just the advantage that Logan's leveraging from his sort of ancillary resources is going to be too much, I suspect.
Logan's only going to attack with the Uro here. It looks like he figures, well, this thing's going to get gobbled up by the Voracious Hydra, and I'd prefer to have this go because I can get it back. That'll leave the Elder Gargaroth on the battlefield. And he's going to cast Satyr Wayfinder after that. That's going to reload that yard. Can he get it back now?
Yeah, he's got 4 mana and a bunch of stuff in the graveyard.
It's just, these 2 turns have been completely absurd for Logan. Look at what he's done here. He has 4 clues at the ready as well after all of that action. There's another land. Boy, it's interesting. I was listening to you recap that last the earlier turns here, Patrick, and it is really just like that other game in the last match that we saw where Michael needed to find a land to get to mana number 4 on time and instead found a Llanowar Elf. This time it was a Wolf Willow Haven. But that one speed bump along the line for the game plan for him has made it really so that Logan had insane turns in between, mainly revolving around Uro.
Right, because this mono green deck does not play very well from behind. The only spots where it really plays well from behind are spots where Nissa is able to do a lot of blocking. But Logan's deck it's not that sort of thing. When Logan's actually attacking with creatures, they're so large that there's no way you're holding them off with 3/3s.
Now we're going to see traverse the Ulvenwald, it looks like, or some clues. There's a Fatal Push. That certainly changes combat here.
Well, MJ's leftovers are also so weak here that...
Mm-hmm. That's right. And they're very susceptible to Fatal Push. You can kill any creature on the battlefield or on the other side of the battlefield with it. So here comes the big Elder Gargaroth as well as Uro. The double block's going to take place, but we're going to see Fatal Push take out that Hydra. And that is going to be the game going to Logan Nettles. His new favorite card, Elder Gargaroth, comes off the top of the library, changes how this game plays out, and he's able to ride it to an impressive victory and force this Game 3 decider. Patrick, it just doesn't get any more intense than this. These players are playing a singular game of Magic for $20,000 and a trophy.
And I'll tell you right now, both players are, besides the stakes, if you're MJ, this is now game 4 post-board that you've played. You have not won one yet.
That's right.
And if you're on Logan's side, you know that MJ's best draws on the play, there's not a whole lot you can do about him. When he's ahead of schedule and he plays a Planeswalker, it's very tough sledding. So the stakes are really high, and both of these players have a lot of reason to be apprehensive about their odds going into game 3.
They've also played all of the possible games here on their match against each other. This is 9 for them going to game 3 every single time. I'm sure that they're getting tired and a little bit frazzled, but this is where the adrenaline's really going to take over, and they'll feel that crash after this is over. But for now, it's time to focus and dial in. And I can tell you, Patrick, given what you just said, my eyeballs are on the top part of my screen at Michael Jacobs' opening hand, because there's a chance for Michael to win this by simply putting together, an early Planeswalker that isn't answered, and we could see a champion crown there. Now, if that doesn't happen, then it's anybody's game.
Yep. I mean, Michael's best draws, that it's not like Logan has no shot against them. He has 1 mana removal to kill a mana accelerator. He has 1 mana discard that can take a Planeswalker out of the hand. But there are going to be a lot of 7-card hands that Logan's supposed to keep, where you just got to cross your fingers and hope you get out of the first 3 turns without too much harm done. And so far, he hasn't had a banger yet. These hands have been missing mana. They've been missing mana accelerator. He's been mulliganing a bunch. Can he finally get a hand that just sort of works?
Nope. This one's okay. Wolf Willow Haven into a 4-drop, but that is not a banger.
Well, I don't know if that's actually the case given Logan's hand, because Logan's hand is really good at breaking up mana creatures. He can't stop Haven into a Planeswalker, and then he's got tiny removal left over for a Gargaroth. This might not be the ideal hand from Michael's perspective in absolute terms, but given Logan's hand, this is about as good as it's going to get.
Interesting. Okay, so while it isn't that most explosive possible here, Michael Jacob does have the mana now to deploy, well, a Planeswalker if he'd like.
Yeah, I mean, you can Vivian plus set up for Gargaroth next turn, and then Logan's got Fatal Push and Disfigure and another Fatal Push in hand. And he's a ways away from being able to escape an Uro. So, like I said, not the best hand for MJ in absolute terms, but given what Logan's hand looks like, it might actually be pretty close to ideal.
All right, here we go. Vivian, Arcbow Ranger, a turn soon. Now it's just going to plus and not do anything, but Michael is able to deploy his game plan first. There's Reclamation Sage.
Yep, I mean, there's nothing.
It's just Uro here, though, huh?
Yeah, there's nothing else going on with this hand. You have a
he is going to Rec Sage. Interesting.
I mean, it pins a little bit of mana, but now with three green devotion, this one's basically free to play.
Right. So it's Elvish Mystic, Hash Up Oasis, which gives you access to 4 mana.
Yeah, you don't net mana on the Elvish Mystic. It is net neutral on mana.
So it's a Voracious Hydra or nothing this turn. Wonder if he'll just go for a big Hydra, or if he's interested in getting this Rec Sage off the battlefield. Yeah, he is. So the 2/3 Hydra.
You just create so much sort of forward pressure with your Planeswalkers when you keep the opposing battlefield clean. I know it's not the sexiest target to tag with a Voracious Hydra, but given the circumstances, I think it's just good for MJ to stay on the front foot, keep your Planeswalker loyalty high. You don't have to worry about, chaining removal spells together, and now your Planeswalker's under duress. Also, keep in mind that Vivian, with another reason to do it is the Vivian can tutor out of the sideboard. And the Voracious Hydra adds to the devotion count. So we might even see MJ sort of start tuning up towards something even like Ulamog.
Okay, well, it looks like Logan says, I'm not having any of that. I'm going to take out both of your creatures and also reduce your devotion count for the Nykthos as much as I can here.
Yep. Not a bad turn there for Logan. Again, he's trying to stave off disaster as much as possible. But if he does not find an answer to the Elder Gargaroth, and he doesn't have all that many, he's going to have a tough time managing all this.
Right. Tons of pressure for Michael Jacob as he makes his push for a championship. He's got Logan Nettles scrambling, but so far, Logan has been able to mount a defense, dispatching of Wolf Willow Haven, Elvish Mystic, and Voracious Hydra to at least stem the bleeding and prevent from super explosive stuff here. But still, he's behind.
This has been the most competitive post-board game we've seen from Jacob yet. He has not really gotten close in the 3 previous ones. This is the first one where I feel like he's north of 50% to get this game, but it's not over by any means, especially if Logan can find some sort of removal spell for a Planeswalker.
We see Vivian Arcbow Ranger up to 6 loyalty. And here's Karn the Great Creator off of Oath. And you saw Michael was looking in the sideboard already, knowing that this is what was going to happen. And I think it's going to be Grafdigger's Cage. There it is. Grafdigger's Cage hits the battlefield to shut off future Uros. Satyr Wayfinder, Shark Typhoon, another Uro, and a Fatal Push at the ready here for Logan. How does he get out of this mess?
It's really tricky. I mean, because part of the problem now is even if you find an answer for Elder Gargaroth, that you're not that far away from having to face down Ulamog as well. So I think that was a really heads-up play there from Michael. You're so ahead on the resources. Like I've mentioned, kind of in the early game, Jacob has this burst of resources where he's advantaged. And by cutting off Uro, you're cutting off Logan's kind of easiest stream towards that slow and steady grind that we mentioned before.
You saw Michael Jacob kind of slap himself on the head there he did neglect to activate Vivian Arcbow Ranger that turn. The plus on the loyalty he didn't do. I don't know if that's going to be a big impact here.
No, I mean,
he can still do whatever he wants with it.
You know, you like to keep it tight at sort of this stage of things, but I think
Mm-hmm.
I would be surprised if it came down to the one loyalty on a Vivian.
Same. Yeah. You know, I view this more as Michael's doing the correct thing by focusing his attention on the big picture strategic elements of the game. Okay, I found a Karn. What can I get? Okay, I need to get Cage to prevent Uro, that type of thing. And then just it was an oversight on the Vivian. But the fact is that Vivian's second minus ability is a -5, and she's at 6. Also has -3 × 2 available. So I don't think that one loyalty is going to be the difference anyway.
Well, it's true. You know, the Shark Typhoon on the other side could complicate matters because Logan might get himself into a position where he can start trying to stem off the bigger activations on Vivian by chipping down the loyalty. But you know, can't take it back now. It is what it is. You just gotta play it. You gotta play it where it lands.
That is exactly right. Here comes Elder Gargaroth, and this is really the card that could close out the tournament here for Michael Jacob, because this Gargaroth is a quick clock that refills the hand, and currently no answer here from Logan.
Curious though what Michael wants to be doing here with both the Karn and the Vivian.
Also curious.
No mana floating, correct? So
nope.
We're not in a spot where he can play the Nykthos and follow up with something big.
Right. I looked for that too. Yeah. Because sometimes those double Nykthos turns are just a joke. Okay. He's going to minus Karn. Now, another thing to point out here, Patrick, is that the whole game plan around Shark Typhoon pressuring the Planeswalkers is now off the table, as the Gargaroth with Reach will hold back the Shark token. This Gargaroth is amazing here.
And as a little bit of extra insurance, Michael's going to go with that Karn and get a Heart of Kirin, which can play defense very effectively here alongside the Planeswalkers. So it's a
wow, that's smart.
Very tough spot here for, you know, you're asking a lot of Logan. Essentially, he needs to have a removal spell for the Heart of Kirin, a removal spell for the Gargaroth, and then a creature to start attacking with in the face of Grafdigger's Cage that cuts off Uro. It's not impossible, but MJ's making a ton of demands all at the same time.
Yeah, I love getting Heart of Kirin. It's not the obvious choice until you lay it out like this and see, okay, if my opponent's going to make a shark, what's going to happen? I mean, you know, because what needed to happen here is Logan, he needed to find some action. And wow, you know, an additional little thing here too is that now there's a counter on the Elder Gargaroth. And, you know, one of Logan's best outs was Heartless Act, and that doesn't kill the Gargaroth anymore.
Yeah, MJ doing a lot of really sharp things on the margins here. It's not a check mark. It's not like the game's over, but he's saying you've got to have pretty much a perfect hand to be able to interact with all of this stuff. And if you fail any test here, you can't get to my Planeswalkers. And if you can't get to my Planeswalkers, there's no chance you can keep up in sort of the card economy, card advantage fight, especially in the face of Grafdigger's Cage, meaning that Uro is not part of the mix.
Yeah, really impressive stuff here by Michael Jacob. He had a good shot to take down this tournament in the last match, fell just a bit short, and let that third match happen. Now he's in the driver's seat, looking to secure the 20,000 and that coveted title from Logan Nettles, who now has to piece together a very complicated puzzle that is going to involve a lot of things that he doesn't know right now. What he's going to draw for the turn, what types of things he could find, you know, off of Uro, that type of stuff. Because this hand he had could have lined up perfectly against Michael Jacobs' hand. It just didn't in this case.
So I'm trying to think of what Logan has, what he can do here. Now that's kind of the funny part about Michael putting Logan to so many different tests is Logan's hand actually kind of stinks right now. It's not even close to really assailing all of this. I'm trying to think, is there anything that can be done other than Uro and hope to draw Murderous Rider? If you get to play your extra land and you have your land drop for the turn. So if you hit Murderous Rider, you have Murderous Rider for the Gargaroth, push for the Heart of Kirin, and now we're playing again. I don't know if there's another line here. If there's another removal spell, something like a Noxious Grasp, that could get it done too. But he needs to find a removal spell for Gargaroth. There it is.
That was a Murderous Rider off the top here. Boy, oh boy, you were trying to piece together any possible way to make this work, and he has found stage one. That was a huge top deck for Logan Nettles. Unbelievable.
But the question is, are the I don't know. I don't know if it was necessarily a mistap of mana. Oh no, he's got triple black. He's sewn up. Okay.
Yep,
I was worried there that he didn't have enough. Yep.
So there's Murderous Rider. That's going to kill the Gargaroth. Look, if that didn't happen here, I can't see any way for Logan to come back. And now he has Fatal Push for the Heart of Kieran, which means he actually gets to attack with his Shark token. An unbelievable turn of events. What a top deck there by Logan Nettles. He knocked Vivian down to 3.
And I mean, Michael was still drawing pretty heavy to just about any creature. Draws up there's a blank, but what a top deck there from Logan. I mean, the door was shut on this one if he didn't hit a removal spell for the Gargaroth that turn, and instead, it's tenuous. You know, a lot can go wrong in between now and the end of this game from Logan's perspective, but he's at least got things under control.
Get that other Reclamation Sage, start getting some Uros back, and just take that trophy all the way home, says Logan Nettles. But really, that was so key. This game would just be over if that didn't happen. And like you said, now he's got to find a way to keep the game plan moving forward. That Grafdigger's Cage doing very good work right now.
Yeah, I mean, MJ gets to plus the Vivian up to 4. And so the Shark can't finish it off that turn. The Karn can go up to 2, I suppose, but the Shark still just finishes that off. And I don't think that he wants to animate a creature anyway, because then you're exposing your Grafdigger's Cage to a removal spell. And if you lose the cage, everything falls apart.
Right. So a blank off the top of the library here for Logan. It was Fabled Passage. He does have the Murderous Rider that's on an adventure, and he can cast the Satyr Wayfinder here to keep the lands flowing. Boy, that was such an incredible draw.
But Logan's on empty too. I mean, one big draw here from MJ can swing this game right back.
That's right. Let's see if Michael Jacob could find something off the top of the library to put him back in the lead. There's a Murderous Rider and a land. He's going to pass the turn back. Is there something for Michael? No, it's another forest off the top of the library. Is this one starting to fall apart? It's really the first player to find something impactful. And it's another Fabled Passage here for Logan as well.
But the door is shutting now on MJ because, as we mentioned before, once those Planeswalkers, you can't do much more with them than the one shot. Now, Nissa can still be a lot of cards here because that can shut off the attacks on the ground, and it's a lot of loyalty. So that's still alive, but we're running out if we're MJ. I mean, there's not a whole lot of good draws left.
Right, and there's another bad one there for Logan, but you mentioned it before. Way better draw potential here for Nettles, and we saw that last turn. It was Llanowar Elves off the top for Michael Jacob. He drew a spell, and it has minimal impact on the game here. And now he finds Elder Gargaroth.
Okay, I mean that counts.
Is that the best possible? That has to be on the short list. Gargaroth is going to hit the battlefield now. Wow, this has been an insane game.
And Logan doesn't have a whole lot of answers left in his deck for a Gargaroth.
No, he does not. Let's see what he can find. He's cracking these Fabled Passages on upkeep, and it's another Satyr Wayfinder.
I swear for the viewers at home, we have not stacked the decks. I know it seems like suspiciously entertaining and close and tight right now. This is clean. Yeah, Worth?
Wait a second, Worth. So I wonder if Michael just uses the Hashep Oasis to make sure that the Gargaroth doesn't get traded off for the board here. And there's Vivian Arcbow Ranger, back-to-back big top decks here for Michael.
Don't got to worry about that now because you can just put the counters on the Gargaroth that gets it up to 8 toughness. And Logan can only put 7 power in front of it. So you would have had to think about it prior to that draw step. Now I think it's pretty easy just to put the counters on the Gargaroth. MJ is going to give this a second. There's no need to rush, but the game has now flipped back, and that putting the counters on the Gargaroth cuts off another potential removal spell from Logan's side.
Yeah,
What a game.
he won. The Heartless Act will no longer be a clean out to the Gargaroth with those counters on it. Incredible. Michael went Forest Llanowar Elves, so about as bad as you can get, into Gargaroth Vivian on those last 4 turns. What a turn of events. Meanwhile, Logan's flooded out. He has just found a bunch of lands.
Yeah, I mean but we only got to this point because Logan was able to spike the Murderous Rider in a spot where if he didn't find it on that draw step, this game would have been over a few minutes ago, probably. So just
That's right.
really back and forth. But MJ he's starting to close the door here. I mean, Logan is running out of time to find an answer, and even if he does, the advantage accrued by this Vivian and this Gargaroth is going to be so substantial that one draw step is not going to be good enough to catch Logan up. Most likely, it's going to require chaining a bunch of stuff together.
Yeah, I do wonder if it's starting to lean into what I was talking about before, with something like Reclamation Sage to kill the cage and then also get Uro back into something else. Like, these are the types of chains of events that I'm thinking of, because yeah, if there's a counter on the Elder Gargaroth, that really does shut off the cleanest out with Heartless Act.
And if memory serves, I think Logan might have cut the Heartless Axe anyway.
Oh, for this last game? Okay.
If memory serves, I wouldn't.
He was moving those back and forth, whether he was on the play or the draw. That is true.
I wouldn't stake my reputation on it, but if memory serves, I think they were cut.
All right, so what do we have going on here? Michael is actually just going to go ahead and crack the Haship Oasis. And there's Vivian putting the counters on, and that is huge. Now it's got Trample as well. Now, 26 life here from Logan Nettles means that he's got enough life total to play with, but that's going to fall away very quickly anyway. And he made a beast. Interesting.
I think the beast is probably a better leftover to have here than a random card in your hand if something were to happen to your Gargaroth or your Vivian.
Right. So this is about protecting planeswalkers at this point rather than getting the extra cards when you're tapped out. Michael Jacob is praying to the Magic Online gods for no big top deck here because he knows how close he is to becoming a Magic Online champion. He finds a forest off the top of the library, but now Vivian is sitting at 5 loyalty. -5 is you may choose a creature card you own from outside the game, reveal it, and put it into your hand. There's a lot of mana available here for Michael.
Yeah, the question is, I think, do you want to try to squeeze one more turn out of your Vivian and then be able to play past that? Or are you willing to cash in your chips right now for an Ulamog?
For Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger?
Because I guess from Michael's perspective, the thing that he's got to be the most mindful about is Shark Typhoon. Because it's concealed. He doesn't know about it. It's an instant. And it's one of those things where it can start chaining together multiple pieces at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So he knows it's not in Logan's hand. He would have seen it already. But although I suppose it could have been the draw step because Logan
could have been.
And
it would be a 9/9 shark in this scenario. Which is certainly relevant when it comes to Elder Gargaroth, right? Throw down the 9/9, and then even if it has some counters, you can throw a couple of creatures in front and get that thing off the battlefield.
Yeah, I mean, you have the option here of just setting in the Gargaroth, sort of cashing in some chips, and seeing what happens. If Shark Typhoon is part of the equation, you're probably going to see it then, and then you can go ahead and get your Ulamog, and if not, maybe you make a different line. Although, who knows? Maybe Logan just says, all right, chump block, pass, and could still be sitting on Shark Typhoon. It's not when Michael's hand is face up. Logan knows that he can get an Ulamog here. So there's no guarantee that even attacking with the Gargaroth here would be enough to induce a Shark Typhoon if that's the last card in Logan's hand. So even though Michael's really ahead and we know Logan's hand's nothing, Michael doesn't know that. And there's no guarantee that he can even induce the card he's most worried about by attacking with his best creature.
I wonder, does Logan have any way to interact with Ulamog at all if it's on the battlefield?
Most people don't.
Yeah, I mean,
I
that's
don't
kind of
believe-
the point, right?
I don't believe that it's much different for him, but I don't think he has an edict or anything like that.
Right.
So
So, that certainly would lean you towards getting that thing down this turn at some point.
because then
Michael
it's just
Jacob.
a one turn. It's a 1 turn window. The attack trigger. At this point, I can't imagine Logan has 40 or more cards left in his deck, so it's just kind of a one and done.
Yeah, he currently has 28, and Ulamog will eat 20 of them, but like, I'm not really seeing how he comes back if that thing gets to turn sideways. Okay, here it is. Vivian Arcbow Ranger has been sacrificed for the -5. Are we going to see Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger here? I'd love to see it.
I mean, we've come this far. We have all the man in the world to work with. We don't really see Virtuous Gear Hulk being a more appealing option.
Michael's still looking over. And remember, Michael is trying to weed out any possible out. Of course, he knows he can just windmill slam Ulamog on the battlefield and it'll probably win. But what if there's something that could win now? What if there's something that could take away a potential out for Logan Nettles, or even a combination of outs, right? Let's say Logan needs to go card into card into card. What if you could head off that at the pass? But there it is. Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger goes on the stack here in Pioneer, gets to exile 2 cards. Boy, Michael, maybe he played this in Vintage Cube. He's definitely playing it now. Here's Ulamog on the stack to finish off the tournament for Michael Jacob, moving ever closer to that championship. And all Logan can do is stare on in disbelief at the way that things have gone here. He got the Miracle top deck. He had exactly what he needed to take out the Planeswalkers and get things back to even. He's supposed to be a big favorite from that point, and all he's found are Satyr Wayfinders and lands since that happened. Michael has been able to take over, and my goodness sakes, that is Reclamation Sage off the top of the library. That has to be the best possible out for him, but the Ulamog is just unassailable.
Right, it's day late, dollar short. That was not a bad draw. It would have been very good a turn or two ago, but I just don't see Logan being able to get enough forward momentum here in the 2 turns that he has left from 2 Ulamog attack triggers.
That's right. So here comes Uro, that has been hiding safely in the graveyard for a very long time. You'd have to think, okay, wait a minute. Now there's a Shark Typhoon.
This is really brutal for Logan, because here comes an avalanche of cards that 1 turn earlier probably could have shifted this game. As it stands, I just don't think I don't think he's gonna have enough time.
He can't find a way to actually get 13 damage across, right? Because he can take the hit from Ulamog here.
He can take the hit.
Go down to 6 cards in library.
But I mean, MJ's still sitting back on his blockers too. It's
Right.
just,
Yeah.
it's not.
MJ can attack with the Gargaroth if he'd like.
The Gargaroth forces a block of some sort, because
Mhm.
now this is a lethal attack. So,
Wow,
and you also
so
get the-
close for Nettles.
I know
he found it. It was just too late.
it's brutal, because he had that Murderous Rider top deck that was like, had to have it in that moment and pulled himself ahead. And now he's having this avalanche of top decks that, like I said, had occurred a turn or two ago. I think would have been good enough to take this game, but I just don't think he has enough time in the face of this Ulamog.
Incredible. Michael Jacob goes over the top with Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger. One of the most powerful cards you can cast in the format. Now it has to go a very certain way to get it onto the battlefield. It starts off in your sideboard. You have to Vivian for it and have the mana. All of those things came together here for Michael, and it looks like he's going to be able to ride Ulamog to the championship here. Elder Gargaroth and Ulamog both in the red zone. As you mentioned, this does force a block of some sort here from Nettles.
Yeah, it could just be a chump block.
Mhm.
I imagine that Nettles wants the chance to attack with his Uro next turn. So, and I think the Shark Typhoon's probably just not a great chump blocker here. So I think we'll probably see the Reclamation Sage in front of something, but the life total is less important than the deck at this point.
Yeah, the Sage can soak up 10 from Ulamog here. And it looks like MJ decided to draw a card. Now he has ran out of gas. He's got 3 forests in hand, so nothing doing. But what else do you need? Attacking for 17 as it is.
Yeah, he's pretty well situated right now.
So we're going to see the Shark Typhoon come in, perhaps just so Logan has a little more information. And it's a Thoughtseize. That's not going to do it. So he's going to chump block here, fall down to 7 life. He's got 5 cards left in his library, and he has to win this turn. He just doesn't have the tools to get the job done against Michael Jacob. He's got Thoughtseize and Disfigure. He'll throw the Thoughtseize out there just to see the 3 forests in hand for Michael. But Michael knows now that there is just no way out for Logan Nettles, and that Michael Jacob is going to be your Magic Online champion, as we see Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, in an absolute act of desperation attack. It's another card in the hand here for Michael, and there's nothing left in the coffers for Logan Nettles. But he's still going to go. I love it. He's only got 3 cards left in his library, but I guess he can bring back the Uro. He finds Elder Gargaroth. But again, the issue here is all Michael needs to do is turn the Ulamog sideways. That's it. He doesn't even need to connect. It just needs to turn sideways, and he can finish it. Logan passes a turn back, and Michael says, I think we got there, and he can just attack in. That's the rest of the library gone. 0 cards in hand, 0 cards in library for his opponent, and Michael Jacob is your Magic Online champion. He wins the $50,000. He wins the trophy. And what a fantastic victory for him. You see him look to the skies. He's so excited, and you should be. Congratulations, Mike.